Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another debate dissection. Get your scalpels ready. And this is a continuation for the first time in a long while, since probably I think the first couple, Ember, of a previous debate, which you can see on the fabulous Better Than Ember channel, the part one where we did the introductions, and we really wanted to continue this one because it was a very good debate. So we sort of got halfway through to the discussions. What were your feelings on it so far?
Well, it's an interesting debate in that, as we discussed last time, Lennox was a fill-in. We don't know who Hitchens' original opponent was supposed to be, but Lennox is a mathematician who also is an apologist, so he tends
Right.
towards the pre-sup side of things, but he's not like Psi 10 either. He doesn't have this full-on pre-sup, you need to prove me wrong attitude. So
Right,
it's
right.
it's a little different.
Yeah, so I'm just going to app volume system sounds. I'm going to turn off system sounds. Someone was telling me I was playing them, so I'm going to turn those off. But yeah, I think that with this one, I mean, I always find exceptions with presup kind of position. I always don't like it. It seems to be very flimsy in my opinion. But of course, but Chris Hitchens is obviously doing well. I think that he does appeal to emotion a little bit, but that's
Hmm.
okay. Like I do like it. So I'll get this up, and I think I'm in the right place. This is just the moderator. So this is neither of our interlocutors, by the way. This is the moderator. Uh, now, I guess we can get this ball rolling. I just want to say hello to everybody: Nara, Kata, Jake, the good old doctor, and I'll
Hello,
start this
lovely people.
rolling. Yeah, yeah. How have you been, Ember? I haven't talked to you for a week or so. I think we've been
Yeah,
sort of.
since the last time. It's all right. Slightly tired.
Hmm.
Took the kids to the drive-in last night, and then had to be up early for Aaron's blasphemous Bible. So
Ooh,
I'm like,
you still
wee.
got a drive-in. We don't have a drive-in in our city anymore. Like the last one closed down a while ago. I think there's maybe
Oof.
one out of town, but like it's a bit far. So, but yeah, there's no drive-ins anymore. So it's I always feel like a warmth when I hear of one. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's retro. I like that. I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
why. It doesn't impact me at all, but it's just I'm glad it exists. It's like
Hmm.
that blockbuster in Alaska or something. It's just like I'm just glad it exists.
Yeah.
Um, but I've had one heck of a week. I've had workmen in my block of units
Mm.
doing the jackhammer drilling, and it's driven me crazy. And I've been so behind, and just it actually started to get me down. Like I was sort of contacted Strata. They said basically stuff off. They didn't care.
Mm.
And it's like, wow, it's actually really starting to affect me. So hopefully things will be better. That too will pass. It looks like they've done everything. I hope they don't have anything else to do, so I can do some more stuff. But yeah, let's get this started. And yeah, I just wanted to say sorry for everyone for being away. But let's get this started.
Sin and universal depravity than it really is with religion in general. That you have a very specific view of what religion is, and that's what you have a problem.
Well, yes. I mean, I think all religions are equally untrue. Because I don't think there is a supernatural dimension to be appealed to, or to be used as an explainer of what we don't currently know about our species or about the cosmos. You get along much better if you exclude that assumption, and that means you don't empower. If you can exclude it, if you can limit it, if you can limit it to a private belief, a belief people keep in their homes and so forth, which are, of course,
Well, they can't even agree on what is the foundation for it, and that's part of the
Hmm.
problem. Like, I was talking to a priest before, like yesterday, and he was sort of saying, "Hey, we atheists don't even agree," and it's like, well, you guys don't agree either. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
and to disagree to the point where you're killing each other and everybody else, like to prove that you're right. So, yeah,
It's not healthy.
I don't, yeah.
more than entitled to do. It means you don't find that you're dealing with a class of witch doctors, mullahs, priests, rabbis, and others who make a living in politics by saying that they have special rights because they're doing God's will, which has been a curse to humanity throughout its entire existence. and currently, I think, in the form of theocracy and its various bullying threats, represents a very direct, immediate threat to the survival of our species.
Now, I do kind of wonder about that whole special rights thing. We covered a little bit of that in the Bible reading today, where God told Moses that the priests are supposed to get like a little extra shekels on the top and a little portion of every offering and so on.
Yes.
And I wonder, anthropologically speaking, if that comes from the priests saying, bring me goodies because God said so, or if it's from the followers who said, no, we need to elevate the priests, you know?
Well, I mean, regardless of what happened in the past, churches have special privileges now. Like, so, you know, let's look at it now that you can't investigate the books of a church in the United States or Australia for that matter. They're sacrosanct for investigation into their finances. You're not allowed to look at them. And that's sort of historically the state can't impose it on the you know, unless there's crimes being committed or suspected to have been committed. That's the one case where they can. But yeah, they don't contribute anything to tax. They're tax exempt, which is a special right, you know, which they share with non-profit organizations, but they don't have to serve the community in order to do so. So they do have special rights above and beyond any other organization out there. So if my organization helps the poor and feeds things and, you know, is doing charity work, and they're doing charity work, I have to prove it and they don't. They can just say, hey, religion, I'm exempt. And, you know, there's organizations like Scientology and the prosperity gospel preachers that have made great use of that to become fabulously wealthy. So, and I think they've leveraged that money and you know, in part of their sort of privilege is being able to levy that into political action, which affects all of us. I mean, the amount of people that actually support their policies is very low when you look at it democratically, but they wield I mean, not an incredible amount of power, but more than their you know, sort of supporters would sort of suggest.
Yeah, they're very loud because they're very organized, because they meet every Sunday.
Yeah. Well, it's not just that. It's also that they've got a lot of money behind them, a lot of there's a attitude among sort of the theists in the realm, if you will, that they have the right to tell other people what to do, that they maintain this right, that they had from ages back, that they get to tell people how to live. And that just isn't the case anymore. You know, they have no more, or I guess what I'm saying is they ought to have no more influence on how people live than anybody else. You know, like it's just their opinion, basically. Dr. Diana says a quick reminder of the main topic of the debate would be a good idea. Yeah. Okay. So the main topic of the debate is God great? They've sidetracked into religion at the moment. Is religion great? But the whole, isn't that the topic?
Yes.
Is God great? So, I mean, obviously, you know, my position is probably the same as Hitchens. God's not great because God doesn't exist at all. That's essentially where I'd come from. He's trying to associate God with religion, that any God that, so, you know, from internal critique, any God that creates religions that's doing all these horrible stuffs can't be great. And I think that's a pretty good, you know, sort of attitude to come from.
Yeah, because God is either commanding it or allowing it.
Yes.
Or doesn't exist.
Or doesn't exist, yeah. And in any case, it's not a great God.
So yes, we'd be better off without it.
Would you like to respond to that, John?
Sorry, I missed the thing that I need to respond to.
Okay.
Well done, John.
He's awesome at this.
Without the doctrine of original sin.
Sorry?
He's awesome at this.
Oh, professional. He did come in last minute. Maybe didn't clean his ears or something.
The question, John, was say, obviously that wasn't my main objection. My main objection was to religion itself. And by the way, now you prompt me, I meant to say, I never said or meant to say that I attacked bad behavior that was undertaken or embarked upon in the name of, as you put it, religion. I think you were trying to be generous to me. I do insist that this kind of bad behavior is innate in religion, is part of religion itself. It's not an abuse of it or something undertaken in the name of. It's a direct consequence of the willingness to believe in the supernatural and the willingness to believe in a supernatural dictatorship in particular. But
I gotta love Hitchens that like his opponent sort of gives him a bit of leeway and he goes, no, don't need it. I'm going to go to the harder position to defend and stand by that. I think there's sort of a nobility in that, right? Like, you've given me the softer position. I don't care. I want the harder position to defend kind of thing. Like, yeah. There's a certain nobility in that.
Yeah, a surety. Like, no, I know I can hold this place. I don't need to fall back.
Yeah.
I think that is the case in some situations, and it is the case with some people who've named the name of Christ. But what I notice here is this, that Christ forbade that kind of behavior. He told his followers not to take up the sword. Why? Because his kingdom was not of this world. So people who behave like that in the name of Christ aren't followers of Christ. They're disobeying him.
Well, okay, but there's other things you can do that are wrong that are not taking up the sword. For instance, when the Catholic Church told all the people in Africa not to wear condoms, kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not taking up the sword, but the harm that it did was insane. People that tell, won't get blood transfusions. I think it's the Seventh-day Adventists, I believe. So we're not talking specifically about slaughter and stuff. You can do great harm in the name of good. What is it? No. Sort of the path to evil is paved with good intentions, I think it was said.
Yeah, that's one of them. There's a few different things.
Yeah.
Something about dictators, but that doesn't come to mind either. But on top of all that, Lennox is cherry picking his own book because Jesus also said, "I come not to bring peace but a sword."
Yes.
Which, you could argue I'm cherry picking by bringing that up, but the fact is that the book says both things, so you can't say it's all one or all the other.
It can be interpreted either way. And, we've seen people interpret it either way. And how do you know, like, how does he know that Christ didn't want you to take the sword, right? How did you know that? Because you're basically saying, hey, the people over here, they're doing it wrong. Well, they say the same thing about you. So how do we tell who's right? We can't.
And I would want to argue that as we look at his character and his attitude, this kind of evil behavior is not endemic to Christianity. It's endemic in caricatures and perversions of Christianity.
Ah, no true Scotsman.
Oh, yeah.
The people who aren't behaving my way, they're not the real Christians.
Yeah. They're not the real Christians. Real Christians wouldn't do that kind of thing. Yeah, real Christians kind of would. Oh, I don't know what you mean by a real Christian. This is something I ran into when talking to some people. I think it was in Praise's room or something. Like, they were just like, but we're the real Christians. And I'm like, look, I don't have a dog in this race kind of thing. But those people over there say they're the real Christians and you're not. But it's like, I don't know how to pass that you can't understand that there's no way for me to tell the difference. Like I can't express that any more than I already have. It's so random.
It's almost like divine revelation isn't a great way to determine the truth of things.
Yeah. And the weird thing is they'll say Catholics aren't real Christians, and Protestantism came from Catholicism. It's so strange. I don't understand it.
Yeah, they need Jesus to show up and tell them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, if he could do that, that would be great. It would sort out a lot of problems with all of these sects and denominations fighting among one another, and not to mention the current sort of back and forth between Islam and Christianity. It would certainly solve a few problems if he just showed up and told everybody.
It's not written that I come not to bring a peace but a sword. Surely it is.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there you go.
That those who won't follow me shall must depart and be cast into everlasting fire. Not a very gentle or pacific remark. Is it not said that if you don't give up your family, if you don't give up thrift, if you don't give up everyone who loves you and everything you love to sacrifice yourself for me, you're not worthy? These are strongly coercive and implicitly authoritarian or even totalitarian statements. And as C.S. Lewis rightly says, it's one of the very rare occasions where I agree with him, so you may not say that the preachments of Jesus of Nazareth are all right, even if you don't accept the religious basis of them. Lewis quite correctly says, if you don't accept that this man was the Son of God, you'll have to notice that many of his statements and sermons are either wicked or insane, or both. It's only on the belief that the world is very soon coming to an end, and that he himself has the right to claim a messianic role in this conclusion, that any of it can make any sort of sense at all. And everyone here knows at least some of the examples of what would be counted as wicked or insane if the messianic claims were found to be questionable, which they have been.
Yeah. Like
Yep.
if somebody came around saying what Jesus said today, we'll probably lock him away for their own good.
There are people today who say stuff very much
That's
like Jesus
true,
said.
and we haven't locked them away, actually, now come to think of it. So, yeah, thanks. Yeah, my position's completely debunked, but we probably ought to, like, seriously.
Yeah, most people see them on the street corners with their bullhorns
Yeah.
and their big old signs, and they say someone should lock them away and then just keep walking.
I would want to question that very seriously because, as I said, Christ forbade the use of the literal sword. So when he said, I came not to bring peace and a sword, we can see exactly what that means. By the fact that he has, his message results in a division in society. That is, I've got the choice to decide for him or against him. And he will honor that choice whichever way it goes. The one sword he didn't come to bring was the physical sword, because when one of his disciples used it,
Yes, he meant everything except the literal thing he plainly said. Okay, gotcha.
I'm a bit fuzzy on that one.
ear of somebody, Christ put the ear back on.
So they say.
Okay, well, the so they say comment may segue into the next question. This one's back on. One of our audience members wants to know if you're correct. Okay, well, about the so they say comment may segue into the next question. She wants to know why Jehovah, why not Osiris, why not Buddha, why, in the words of one of our guests here, why is one myth or folktale more true than another?
Well, first of all, I don't think they're all myths. I think there are many myths around them.
So intellectual consistency, like why do we believe one but not another? Like what gives one? Yeah, which should be an interesting question, and that So he's sort of using the shadow argument that they're all shadows of the same sort of great being, which happens to be the Christian God. But why can't you say the other way round? Like I think he's going to miss the question. Would be my guess, but
Yeah,
that's my prediction.
The church that I got ordained through, they believe that all religions have seeds of truth, and it's a version of like God shows his face to different people in different ways, and then humans fuck it up, but there's some universal truth behind it all. So all gods are the same power, which but I never really got a good answer on polytheistic faiths on that one, but
maybe they're all aspects, maybe God jumps behind a bush, puts on a mustache and jumps out again, like maybe that's what's going on. Who knows?
Like Superman.
Right. Yeah, just that Groucho Marx mustache and glasses, I'm the god of wine. But the whole point is that this argument rings hollow to me because the reason why is because what I get the impression of when talking to people that make this argument is that, it all points to one eternal truth, but that truth is the one that I believe in. Like, I have the most accurate representation of that thing. And it still doesn't solve the question because you're sort of like, well, why do we believe yours over anybody else's? So, like, why isn't it the Hindu that has the most accurate representation, kind of thing? Why is it your one that has the most accurate of this, sort of God? And it
how
sort
do
of
we
is.
tell?
And how do we tell? Right, exactly. But sort of, we can't then, like, so it doesn't answer the question at all. But these people, they kind of want to make a deist argument that there's like a amorphous being that did everything and not commit to any actual God. While at the same time, this guy's a Christian. He believes that Jesus is God. That's just a fact. Like, it's just, don't be shy about it.
Yeah, it's similar to the apologist standard shtick. Like, let's look at the Kalam. Well, that proves there must be some kind of creator. Therefore,
Right.
my religion is true. Like, that's a hell of a leap, my dude. Can you bridge that gap for me? No? Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
World. And certainly the question is an important question because it makes the distinction between the kind of deism or even theism that responds to the design in the universe and so on, and says, why this one God? My answer to that, ladies and gentlemen, is very simple. I have to decide that like I decide everything else, on the basis of the evidence. And the evidence in the case of the life.
Okay, so he's not a precept. He's an evidentialist.
Or so
a
he says.
precept would. Well, I mean, just taking from his argument, that's definitely not a precept argument. There's no way that's an evidentialist. And a precept wouldn't even acknowledge that a God. They would need evidence because a God obviously exists, kind of thing. It's a given. So that at least that argument is definitely an evidentialist argument. But,
Death, resurrection of Jesus Christ has convinced me that he is God incarnate. So I base my faith on that evidence. And of course, each one of us must make up our own mind. Now, if we had time, I could explain that evidence in detail. But the point of the question is, how can we decide? We have to decide on the basis of evidence. Just as people who take the atheist view, they think the evidence points that way. And mercifully, we're still a free enough society that we can make these decisions, but we must make them personally.
He has a fair point there, but it kind of supports Hitchens' side. Mercifully, we're a free enough society that we can still make these decisions for ourselves. If religion ascended back to the levels of supreme authority that they had in previous centuries, that would not be an option. It's greater secularism.
We haven't always had that freedom, have we? I mean, there was a time when if you didn't believe in what, John Lennox here wants you to believe, or even if you believed the same thing but not in the right way, I'm looking at the Cathars here, you were kind of slaughtered wholesale.
Yeah, eradicated just for your heresy, as it were. And that's by no means unique to Christianity. The Sunnis and the Shia have been at war for 1,000 years. It just... It's all over the bloody place. But I both like and dislike that he went with, the evidence convinced me. Because, it's not on topic for this debate, but it has come up in many, many other debates. The evidence is just underwhelming, and maybe that's just my conclusion. Maybe John is more easily swayed, but here's the thing. Every single claim that made for Jesus, the miracles, the resurrection, all of these things. There are other figures throughout history, one of which just died in like 2011, who meet all the same criteria and even exceed them. Sai Baba, claimed to be the reincarnation of a previous Sai Baba, has performed huge miracles, including raising the dead in front of millions of witnesses who are literally still alive today. Like, the difference is resurrection versus reincarnation. But if you're willing to do the transitive property on that one miracle, all the others check out. and it's in our lifetime. So why are evidentialist Christians not convinced that Hinduism, therefore, is even more true than Christianity?
Well, and I also think that it's not so much the evidence is there for your religion, it's just that you weight it for your religion as opposed to any other religion. Like all of the, like you said, the Sai Baba, like you obviously don't think because of the evidence that guy was, your Messiah kind of thing, or Muhammad was your Messiah, even though there is sort of claims of miracles and things like that. So it seems to be just a bias towards the one you want. And I think Electric Monk made an awesome point. In certain countries, being an atheist or apostate can be a death sentence. Yeah, absolutely. Or, and let's not forget that in certain countries like the US, for instance, you will be stigmatized if you're an atheist. Like atheists are still the least trusted demographic out of anybody in America, which is crazy. Like it just, all of the atheists that I know, yeah, some are bad people. Most of them are really good people. I don't see why you would distrust a demographic like that. It's and by a long shot, that's not even close.
Yeah, it's that whole if you're not afraid of God, you're not afraid of anything. So you could do absolutely anything.
Yeah.
Something.
I
like
mean,
that.
I'm just lucky in Australia. No one really cares. Like people just don't care, which is great. You don't have to explain a religion. You don't have to be religious. There's no compulsion. It's actually quite. I don't know how I would do in America where someone says, "Which church do you go to?" Because that's not a question you hear here. Like it just isn't a question that comes up. But I've heard that in America, people will go, "Which church do you go to?" Not "Do you go to church?" But which church? Like you have to be going to a church, which is crazy.
Yeah, and they will get judgy. Like if you form a connection with somebody and they like you first, it changes their reaction. Then when you give the wrong answer to the church question, like a Baptist fellow I knew, he asked, "What church do you go to?" And I knew where that was going. I didn't want to get into it, so I just off the cuff said Methodist, and he went, "Oh, well, you ought to get in the Baptist way of churching because those Methodists are going to hell." And so even when a person likes you, there's still that judgment and my way is the right way and all that sort of stuff.
I don't know. That'd make me really uncomfortable. Like really uncomfortable. I don't know how I would deal with that. I would sort of just I would probably say, "Hey, I don't go to church," or something like that. But it would seem odd just to sort of somebody go, "Oh, well, because of your religion, I'm going to judge you harshly." I mean, it's not like I hear someone go, "Oh, well, I'm a Christian," and I go, "Well, you're obviously horrible." Like that's not. Anyway, just weird.
No, it's valid. I mean, it's come up in presidential elections. There was a big hubbub over Kennedy. Oh, can we trust a Catholic? He'll obey the Vatican and not do what's right for America, and all this nonsense.
Wow. Okay.
Well, you'll have noticed that there are many moments in the New Testament Gospels. One of them I'll take for the simple reason that it's easy to remember, that the Messiah will come to Jerusalem riding an ass or a donkey. There are many others, including what town he'll be born
and two asses at once.
Hey, look, riding an ass is kind of some people's favorite pastime, so don't knock it till you've tried it, basically. No, and the thing was that he would enter Jerusalem on a donkey, and it's like they knew that prophecy beforehand. How hard would it have been to get the man a donkey and just ride it through? You know what I mean? That's not an example of a prophecy that's hard to fulfill. Like a miracle isn't even involved. It's just a goddamn ass. Like I don't understand why that's a prophecy fulfilled.
The bar for miracles and prophecy seems to have been a lot lower in the past.
Yeah. And not to mention the city of Tyre is like one of my favorites. Like they failed the prophecy, and so they said that he'd go north and take these other lands, and then he failed that prophecy too. Like it was just Nebuchadnezzar could not catch a break, even though God was apparently prophesizing these things for him. It was kind of hilarious.
And this was done so that the prophecy should be fulfilled, that it should be done, because they knew what the prophecies were.
Yeah.
A virgin will conceive for example, is another one. Though the word in Hebrew, alma, actually just means marriageable young woman, doesn't mean unpenetrated young female at all. But it's all reverse engineering. It says right there in the text, we're telling you this happened because that would mean that the prophecies had come true. So I think you might suspect a little, mightn't you, someone who's telling you literally as they're going along why they're telling you this so that the conditions of prophecy fulfillment can.
And the one that always gets me is the whole story traveling to Bethlehem, because that's where they were born. That is not how a census is done. That is not how a census is performed. What use is a census for people to go where they don't live? That is insane. Like, we know the Romans did censuses. We know that they took down where everybody lived, what they were doing, so they could plan for their empire. The idea that people had to travel back to where they were born is insane. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But they needed Jesus to be born in Bethlehem. They needed that. So, sort of, instead of Nazareth, he had to have been born in Bethlehem. So they have this story about her going back to her place of... It's weird. It's very weird.
And even better, there's another gospel that contradicts that. I forget if it's Mark or Matthew, but according to that one, they lived in Bethlehem the whole time. So they had a house there. But nobody talks about that one because there's no manger, because they had a house there. Why would you give birth in a manger if you had a house? So it doesn't have that whole humble King of Kings born in the most... poor, impoverished beginnings possible you can imagine. And then on top of that, there's the whole thing about the lineage, the prophecy that he has to descend from David, be of the house of David, to restore the throne and drive out the Romans and all that, which he never actually did, but details. And he derives his lineage through Joseph, even though it was supposedly a virgin impregnation, because they misunderstood that term alma. I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Be met, but there's a much graver problem, even than that naivete, which is that these prophecies are of a Jewish Messiah, and that the Jewish religious authorities of the time considered, who were the nearest, much closer to being eyewitnesses, if the story is true at all, much closer than the authors of any of the Gospels. They were the people who were the religious authority in the area. He was a member, if he existed, of their congregation. They thought he was a sorcerer and a fraud and an impostor, and convicted him of blasphemy, because though he in fact never said that he was God, there are some Christians I know who do say that Jesus is God. There are some who say he only claims to be the son of. The critical question is, he's asked, art thou the Christ? Are you the Messiah? And he gives a slightly evasive answer at this point, but it's enough to make the Sanhedrin rend its garments. So all you're seeing in this tale, if it be true at all, if you have any truth to it, is the origin of Jewish-Christian fratricide, of the Jews who have nurtured the idea of prophecy and the Messiah through their prophets for generations, who believe the Messiah has not yet even considered deigning showing up, and those who tell the Jews, why are you wasting your time? The good news has already happened. Why did you just get with the program? I submit that neither of these propositions is worthy of the consideration of an intelligent or educated human being.
So that's the whole point. Like, and sort of, so I remember having a discussion with somebody about Muhammad, and they sort of said, oh, well, there was all of these people that claimed he was a fraud and doing tricks about the moon splitting. And the question is, well, why do we believe the people that support him instead of the people that say he's an imposter and a fraud? Because if somebody's truly the sort of son of God that can do miracles for everybody to see, why is anybody saying that he's an imposter? Like, why is that even up for discussion at the time? Not that everybody agreeing would make him definitely what he claimed to be. It could fool, almost everybody. But the fact that the people that that believe in the Messiah go, no, that's not him. Why would they do that? So, it just, what it says to me is that you're sort of doing the Texas sharpshooter. You're accepting everybody that believed he was the Messiah, their eyewitness testimony, and you're discarding all of the eyewitness testimony that said that he wasn't. So, yeah. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it reminds me of that part, which it's strange to me that it's recorded in the Gospels, but it is recorded in the Gospels and therefore must be accepted by all Christians. That when Jesus went home to visit his family, he wasn't able to use his magic powers because they didn't believe in him. In fact, they were quite suspect. They were quite skeptical. You would think that would be the time for him to prove himself and demonstrate his powers in
When was that?
spite of their skepticism.
I don't remember that.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Okay.
I will see if I can find that bit. But yeah, as far as the main point, there is a lot of stuff in the Gospels that disputes the divinity of Jesus, even right in the Gospel. Not just contradictions and questionable parts, but things that didn't happen that were absolutely supposed to happen. Like I just heard over on Deep Drinks just before this stream, a professor saying that the whole casting out of the demon legion into the swine and then driving them into the sea was sort of a ripoff of Circe in Odysseus.
Odysseus, yeah.
Yeah, but also it was a way of kind of trying to do.
It was the sailors, right? It was the Odysseus' sailors that were turned into pigs by Circe. And then he had to seduce her to get them turned back, I believe. I think was the thing. I'm really
sure.
struggling to remember.
It's been a long time. It was the high school when I read the Odyssey. But the whole reason they changed it to Legion was because of that prophecy where the Messiah would drive out the Roman legions and free the kingdom. That was an attempt to try to make that prophecy true, even though it was a total failure at it.
Yeah.
It's Bronze Age peasant Palestinian superstition. And the competition over it and interpretations over it have made humanity's life even more miserable than it was going to be otherwise.
Well, I know that Dr. Lennox has a response to that.
And in the third form of plagiarism that it takes, which is the plagiarism of Islam from both Judaism and Christianity, the competition between monotheism has become really outright menacing. And the real responsibility of citizens is to hold it down, is to resist theocratic bullying and the superstitions that underlie it.
That's, I want to move on to another question, but I'll just give you just a...
Yeah, he doesn't really want Hitchens to be saying that. Yeah, it's getting downright worrying. Absolutely. Like, I worry about the way that some Christians speak, especially about atheism and secularism, sort of like it's almost military in their speech. Like, it's a war. We've got to win this war and cast these people. And it's like, what are you doing? Like,
to the point that they're actually quoting Hitler as if he had good ideas.
Right, and sort of talking about sort of, you know, the end of the world when we get these people. Like, it's like, those are your fellow human beings. Come on now.
Well, their own specialness is more important to them than other human lives, which I suppose is the main difference between religious people and humanists. Like, you could be a religious humanist, but that kind of moderation doesn't really rise to visibility in the current climate of whoever has the loudest microphone kind of thing.
I don't know many religious people that are humanists, that like put humans first. It's always God first, 100% God first. Like, I could count on one hand the amount of theist humanists that I've met. I have not met many at all. Maybe it's just because I'm, you know, stuck in the cesspool that is, you know, YouTube theism. But I haven't met many.
Few seconds to respond very briefly to that.
Well, if you're going to call it Bronze Age superstition, you'd be better to get it right, because one of your statements there is just false. Jesus claimed to be God, and they stoned him. Why did they stone him? Because you, being a man, make yourself God. The notion that he never claimed to be God is simply false. And you say prophecy is irrelevant and superstition and all of that. One of the things that I find
Yeah, so he's got one good point, and that's there's probably Iron Age for New Testament, not Bronze Age kind of thing. So
Yeah, depending on where you put the
yeah,
line. And I see what he's getting at with the whole, oh, Jesus did claim to be God. He didn't expressly say that, but he did
directly,
say
yeah,
stuff like, no one comes to the Father but through me. I am the way and the truth and interpretations on that third word vary.
yeah.
I've heard life, I've heard light, I've heard
Oh,
lie.
both are in the in the Bible. The way, the truth, and the life, and the way, the truth, and the light. Both have been stated in the Bible. So either is fine. It doesn't really matter. You're just quoting from a different section. That's
Very interesting about the Christian faith is it's not a mere philosophy. It's geared into history. And when Jesus came, there were various things that were predicted. He fulfilled them.
So it's geared into history. We do have this overhang of Christianity in our society, but I would submit it doesn't make it a better society. That's sort of just well, it's always been that way. So obviously it's working, and sort of the things that have made our lives better significantly in the modern age has not been Christianity. It's been Enlightenment, the Enlightenment, science and technology. That's what's made our lives better, not Christianity. So this whole idea of, oh, but we came from Christianity, I reject it. I think that sort of current Western society came from a lot of different places. I mean, not to mention that a lot of it comes from classical Greek thinking. So
Oh yeah, a whole lot of that got adapted into Christianity early on. That's one of the reasons Augustine is famous, because he was a
right.
classically trained master of rhetoric in the scholarly sense, and he revised the Bible to include more rhetorical devices, like the whole guilt trip thing. Jesus died for you. You owe it to him to be loyal. That's from Augustine.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
The biggest of all was the fact that he fulfilled ideas that had been current in Israel for centuries, that someday there would become a person who would die for his people's sins. Now, that is a huge thing, of course. And it seems to me that those prophecies, when they are fulfilled, provide part of the evidence that this thing is much bigger than some little local thing happening in Palestine, although it happened there. But
how does he know that he died for their sins?
Yeah, Jesus
Isn't
never
that kind
mentions
of begging the question? Yeah.
Jesus never mentions that. But also, if it's so much bigger than Palestine, why did it only take place in Palestine? Why didn't Jesus march into Rome and get martyred there by the corrupt Caesar? Or something more than just hanging out his hometown, basically. Also, to answer that earlier thing, it's Mark chapter 6. Jesus apparently he was telling his disciples, they weren't actually with him, and he said to them, only in his hometown, among his relatives, and in his own house is a prophet without honor. He could not do any miracles there except lay his hands on a few of the sick people and heal them, and he was amazed by their lack of faith. So their lack of faith disturbed him so much, it rendered him metaphysically impotent. He couldn't perform.
Wow. It's almost like disbelief stops you from doing miracles.
Yeah. It's a strange contrast. Like,
well,
magicians work better when you disbelieve them. Well, some magicians.
So I think it might be more entertaining. Anyway, like, it reminds me of those, touch of death kung fu masters that can kill anybody with or knock somebody out without even touching them. And as soon as they meet a non-believer, they go, well, it doesn't work on them because they don't believe. But, it's like, really?
is geared into a whole revelation through history itself. So I don't find it a product of Bronze Age superstition. They were not superstitious.
Okay.
Really? Really?
Every spring we have to paint the lintels of our doors with lamb's blood,
Yeah.
or God might get angry. But we're not superstitious, though.
And on a certain day, we've got to light the manica, like the thingo, and we've got to wear certain threads and not boil calves in their mother's milk, and not eat shell. Like, come on now, come on.
Any more sense, for example, when he mentioned the virginal conception of Christ, if I may just say a word about that when Joseph discovered that Mary was pregnant, he didn't suddenly believe in a miracle. He wanted to divorce her. Why? Because he knew exactly as we do where babies come from. He wasn't stupid, nor was he pre-scientific.
Did he want to divorce her?
Accounts probably vary. I'm not familiar with anyone offhand, but I mean, if the Christian dude says so, why not?
Okay.
I'm willing to go with it anyway.
Resolved to divorce her quietly. The Lord appeared to him in a dream. Of course he did. Of course he did. Because, whenever I dream about things, it always means it's true.
Yeah. Like the Marvel mythology, when you dream, you're actually in the body of your alternate self in another multiversal world. Never mind the dreams where you're not in a body; those don't count.
I liked where they were going with that. I think it's a bit of a stretch, though, kind of thing. Like it's a bit of a it sort of suggests there's a universe somewhere out there where I'm being chased by like pickles or something.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like come on now. That's
Giant bananas because Matt Powell came up too many times in my feed.
Oh wow. Matt Powell? I thought bananas were associated with Ray Comfort. Has Matt Powell taken on the banana?
A little of each. Ray Comfort is still infamous for his atheist's greatest nightmare, but it is said that Matt
we were
Powell
shaking in our boots over that one.
Absolutely. But it is said that Matt Powell keeps a giant inflatable banana in his backyard, and he calls it Dr. Peel.
Why? I mean, that's kind of funny, but okay.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Convincing for him to accept what I believe to be the true solution, that this was a unique miracle of God encoding himself into humanity.
Encoding himself into humanity.
Will you promise to do it quickly?
So if your wife is pregnant and you know it's not you, the only alternative is that it's the Holy Spirit.
That's a false...
David Hume deals with this quite well.
I mean, what's more probable?
Maybe spirits were involved somewhere. Jeez. Wow. Chat's being a bit weird.
Yeah.
No, you're welcome to stay, RJ. But seriously, man, like we're having a talk about that's sort of not on topic. I think you just want to sort of, cause trouble. Cool, whatever. I mean, yeah, I'm bold. It's actually, you know what? Do you know how long it's been since I paid for a haircut? It's amazing. I'm so happy about it.
Oh yeah, for sure. My kids are pissed because I went and did this, and they're like, "You look like a thumb," and I'm like, "Dudes, I've been doing this. I cut my hair twice a year. I just and then I don't have to frickin' worry about it." You know?
Yeah. And plus, what looks worth, a shaved head or somebody with a few strands living in denial? That they're losing their hair. I think that if you just accept it and go on with your life, you be honest. Be honest with yourself. That's what we're all after. Okay. If it's not on topic, RJ, just address it to my email address, and I'll deal with it. Thank you.
Yeah,
the case
yeah.
of the laws of nature being suspended, you have to ask yourself, have they been suspended in my favor, or am I possibly under a misapprehension? I think it's Thomas Paine who asks, which is more likely, that the laws of nature are suspended or that a Jewish girl should tell a fib? We have to grow up out of this stuff, you know? Now, your problem, Dr. Lennox, John, if I may say so,
Yes,
is not with me. Your problem is with Monsignor Ronald Knox, one of the greatest Christian apologists, first an Anglican, then an Anglo-Catholic, then finally a Roman Catholic, who in his book of apologetics very directly says Jesus of Nazareth never claimed to be God. It's not my problem. He claimed sometimes to be the Son, or let people run away with that idea. And to Jews, he was asked, when he was asked the direct question, are you the expected one, the awaited one, the one we want, the Messiah? He gave a slightly evasive, but they thought profane answer. Now, this is my account of this is correct. I'm sorry to say.
Well,
Okay.
I regret to say.
I think
I just hate to cut off a good conversation, but I'll give.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah.
One last.
Well,
It's too
I'm,
good to-
I'm fascinated that he quotes David Hume and talking about the suspension of nature. David Hume has got about the worst analysis of miracles I've ever read in my life. First of all, he didn't really believe in a law of cause and effect on which you base laws of nature. Secondly,
No, just because there was a problem of induction, like making it into a foundation, doesn't mean he didn't believe in cause and effect, sir. You are misrepresenting Hume. Yeah, RJ's, look,
Shock.
if you're just gonna sit in chat and like shout things at people and, you know, be an ass, basically, yeah. Thank you, Kata. Thank you, Kata. Yeah, so I mean, you're welcome to stay. I kind of run a pretty respectful room. You're welcome to inject your opinion. That's fine, but you know, we want to at least keep it on topic. And you know, if you're just going to sit in chat and yell stuff, then you know we can do without, mate. You know, if you want to debate or something, send me an email and I'll deal with it. But there's no reason to disrupt everybody else with sort of shenanigans. Oh, thanks, Kata. You are the best bug. It's Cat Bug. Yeah. So Hume knew there were problems with foundational stuff, like the problems with induction, the problems with fallibility. It doesn't mean he didn't believe in cause and effect. There's problems grounding it, not that you shouldn't believe in it because the evidence points that way. Like, I think he's really misrepresenting Hume.
Mm.
the laws of nature are not suspended in a miracle. It's God feeds a new event in. If I put £100 plus £100 or $100 in my drawer tonight, 100 plus 100 is 200. If I find $50 in the drawer tomorrow, I don't say the laws of arithmetic have been broken. I say the laws of Alabama have been broken.
Yeah.
That's actually a funny joke. Yeah, but if somebody is a virgin, has never had sex, right, and has never had any ejaculate come anywhere near her for any reason, and she gets pregnant, that is a suspension of the laws of nature, right? That isn't like, it's not the same as somebody breaking in and putting $50 in your drawer, right? This is something that does not happen in nature. Now, there was one case of a girl getting pregnant. Do you know about this? That was a virgin?
I mean, I could theorize a couple ways that might happen, like an artificial insemination sort of deal, because you'd still be a virgin.
Correct. I mean, we can do this miracle today pretty easily, actually. You know, we just have a girl who's never had sex be artificially inseminated. That's all that's required to do the miracle that Jesus' birth. But actually, this happened in Mexico, where it was a girl that had performed oral sex, got stabbed shortly afterwards, and it perforated her stomach and her nicked her ovaries, and actually got her pregnant.
Now that, even though that's entirely naturalistic processes, the fact that it worked, that I might consider calling a miracle. That's pretty trippy.
Maybe Jesus is upon us.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's possible. When I worked for Yahoo doing internet news, one of the weird stories I came across was a virgin girl who gave birth to her own sibling, which sounds really freaking biblical. But it turns out it was one of those situations where one twin absorbs the other.
Oh, right.
So after
yeah,
she was
yeah.
born, she passed the body of her, like,
Right.
just few cells absorbed
Yeah, yeah.
twin.
Wow. That's yeah, that does sound biblical.
Hmm.
But let me make the point from this. Wait a minute, I'm not finished.
Well, then you admit there's no conundrum.
No.
There's no problem to be solved in that case.
Yes, my knowledge
There's
of
nothing
the
to be
law.
explained.
There is. The knowledge.
Not if it's covered by the laws of Alabama, it isn't.
But just a second. My knowledge that 1 + 1 = 2, I know that law, so to speak, tells me that another event has been fed into the system. And that's exactly what happens. My knowledge that dead men don't normally rise by observation means that if one does rise, not the laws of nature have been suspended or broken, but God, who created the universe and built into it those laws which are not causes but are descriptions of regularities, he's perfectly free, of course, as the creator, to feed a new event in, and then the laws of nature take over.
The problem is that you're undermining your own position, because you don't believe anybody else's claims, right? So the moon splitting in half that the Muslims make, you don't say, well, then I know somebody else fed that in there, right? Because the moon usually doesn't split in half. And if it split in half, people would see it. That's how I know it was a miracle, because that doesn't ordinarily happen. So you're using this exception and your special pleading for your own religion, but not any other claim out there that doesn't happen according to nature. So the claims of Zoroastrianism, or the sort of claims that what was the name of that person you said died in India?
Sai Baba.
Sai Baba rose people from the dead. You're not saying, hey, that shows that they did that, because that's a suspension of law. You're using that specifically for your own beliefs and not applying it intellectually consistently across all beliefs.
Yeah, as Hitchens himself pointed out famously in, I believe it was a different debate, but he says, there was not just Jesus, but there was Lazarus, and there were all the people who rose with Jesus at the same time, that resurrection was something of a banality in those days. And additionally, Jesus wasn't by far the first dude to resurrect. There were gods, there were powerful mortals, there were prophets. People were just coming back to life all willy-nilly back then. But only Jesus's counts for some reason.
Yeah, and sort of, it doesn't seem to happen anymore. Like God doesn't seem to want to show that, because lots of people rose from the dead, as you pointed out. Did John the Baptist do the same? Didn't he?
Not sure. I'm still a little unclear about John the Baptist. I'm waiting for the Bible study to get to that point, because I know there's John Jesus's brother, then there's John the Baptist, then there's John the apocalypse dude, and some of them may or may not be the same John, and then there's other Johns besides, and I have no fucking idea.
So in Mark, it depicts John as a prophetic figure who was arrested, executed, buried by disciples, and according to Mark, raised from the dead. So, like even John the Baptist is coming back to life. So, it's all death's only a minor inconvenience back then, apparently.
Yeah, it's a Marvel movie up in here.
We need to retcon the Bible.
And a baby is born 9 months later.
Actually, now that I mention it, a lot of people are retconning the Bible now that I've come to think about it. So
it's true.
I think Hugh is completely wrong about this.
Of course it is.
I will let.
On that
Please.
assumption, then there's nothing exceptional in. Do you believe that the sun stood still at midday so Joshua could complete his battle plan?
But I've just said
Do you in
that-
fact believe that?
Yes, that is how
do.
it was perceived. But let me go back to what you just.
yeah, which is an interesting one, because if the sun stood still, I mean, back in that day, you could say, hey, the sun stood still for, until we could complete the battle during the daytime, because you can't fight at night. That's fine. People believe it. Okay, well, that's fine. Now, what we know is that would have meant that the Earth stopped rotating for that amount of time. And for that to happen, you would basically have everything fly off the Earth at an incredible speed because of inertia. Everything not nailed down, essentially. So that miracle becomes a whole lot more complicated, because how did God stop the Earth? Why didn't everything fly off? Did he pin everything down? How did it restart its rotation? Why did nobody else note that the rotation stopped in the world, kind of thing? You would think people would notice the sun stood still everywhere. There's a million problems with that.
Time bubbles.
Time bubbles.
You just said, Christopher, you have just said that there's nothing exceptional in it. There is something exceptional in it. But the claim that the laws of nature are suspended as if they cause things is not true. It's that God has done something very exceptional. He has fed an event in, and the way we recognize that is because we already know the regularities. If you didn't know the laws of nature, you could believe that everything was a miracle.
Okay, do you want me to do one more or not?
Kind of.
Yeah, well,
Like,
kind of?
if we didn't have any understanding of the Earth orbiting the sun, then the sun standing still would be much less of a big deal. We'd be like, okay, the sun just hung out for a minute. So if we didn't have the knowledge of the normal cycle of the solar day, then the sun standing still wouldn't even be an exception to the norm. It'd be like, okay, it's doing that now, who cares? But if you're going to argue that these are naturalistic things, we just don't understand the mechanisms by which they operate, they're rare, but they're natural, then
Right.
they're no longer miracles, you know?
Well, yeah, that definition, it seems to be like, what is a miracle? So most people would say that a miracle is a supernatural event. It is a event that cannot happen under natural laws. But he's sort of trying to say, no, it's natural laws, but it's something that can't ordinarily happen without God's intervention, adding some kind of loophole for the law, right?
So like God has
but
cheat
then-
codes.
Right. God's got a Konami code. Yes, the video game has these rules, but you can put in a Konami code to sort of make an exception to it. But then it begs the question, or it raises the question, I should say, to be more accurate. Like, why are they laws of nature then, if they can be changed at will by something? They're not really laws then, they're more like guidelines. It's kind of a weird thing to say.
It kind of reminds me of some of the fantasy books. Their systems of magic are the laws of nature are just the default settings, and then when you use magic, you override them temporarily, and then they go back to normal after the spell is completed or whatever the heck it is you're doing.
Right. And I mean, I guess it's fine to say that, but if God changing, like, if people rising from the dead is natural, it bends the word natural completely out of the, I mean, I don't know what, your idea of what is natural is then completely absurd, because that means sort of, necromancy is natural. Walking on water is a natural thing to do.
Yeah.
How
are we to differentiate what's special and what's not?
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. It's very weird. I feel like he's playing with words a little bit to sort of say, well, it's natural as in it's an inherent part of the universe, as opposed to the natural that we think of, which is what do we see in the normal world around us. What do we see as
I feel like there's an equivocation built in somewhere into Lennox's thinking there, how he's got this idea that it's not breaking the laws of the universe because they're God's laws.
Right.
An out of wedlock baby isn't something that requires a natural supernatural explanation. It's its own explanation. The sun standing still at midday, or the daughter of Jairus being raised from the grave, or Lazarus being raised from the grave, neither of them with anything you notice to say for themselves about this event. The account in the Gospel of at the time of the crucifixion, all the graves of Jerusalem opening, and all the tenants of all the graves coming out and walking around the city and greeting people informally, rather suggesting that resurrection in the Greater Jerusalem area wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah, so this, if you're wondering, this is actually in the Bible. Hundreds of graves broke open, and the bodies of saints were all resurrected, and they walked around the city interacting with people. This has myriad of problems with it. Number one, why wasn't the event recorded in any other Gospels? That's question number one. Like, you'd think an event like that would be recorded in every Gospel, not just one of them.
And I don't know, maybe any other human living in the city, because it was...
Or the Romans,
Yeah.
Like, you'd think they would have written that down. They were pretty good about writing things down.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think an army of undead saints would sort of capture your attention. But no, apparently everybody but one of the gospel writers was oblivious to it.
Yeah, even Josephus couldn't be bothered to take note of the frickin' zombies marching in the streets protesting for zombie rights, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's baffling as to why this event wasn't one of the biggest events ever recorded. Like, it was a footnote in one of the Gospels, and it reads like mythology. It has that sort of backhanded, and the saints rose from the grave and wandered around the city and interacted and talked with people, kind of thing. Like, don't check my sources. It seems poetic in the way that it's written. Like, it is just a, and great events transpired kind of thing. And then people rose from the dead, and cats lived with dogs, and hedgehogs fell from the sky. That's the kind of thing it sounds like.
If you're willing to believe any of this, that's the sort of thing you're willing to believe.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We'll move on to our next question. That was too good an exchange to interrupt. So this is for Mr. Hitchens, and again, we'll do a little bit of free play on this.
I bet we will.
Yes, we will. I imagine that's what most folks came to see.
I dare hazard that we will.
I just love the way that he speaks. I dare hazard that we will. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I wish I could speak as well as Hitchens. He certainly has this incredible rhetoric devices about him. It's very great.
Yeah, it's a combination of charm and wit and panache and his huge vocabulary. It's just a pleasure to hear that man talk.
I do like working on my vocabulary. I do try to, but I feel humbled when Hitchens rolls out some of his, it's almost like poetry the way that he speaks. It's incredibly succinct yet detailed, just amazing.
Now, are you willing to accept the view of Peter Singer that man has no ultimate dignity, meaning, hope, or value? If not, why not?
No, but then the why not is problematic, of course, because there is, whether you are a materialist or a supernaturalist, no particular reason to say that human life has any enormous innate value. After all, religion disposes of people in heaps and mounds and says, go out, we depart into eternal fire, you're dust, you're nothing. If you don't have our faith, you're nothing less than nothing, you're worse, you're evil, wicked, so forth. So these are...
Yeah, they think that you are born bad, that you're born, incredibly bad. I would hazard that sort of all life has intrinsic value just because it's incredibly scarce in the universe, or appears to be scarce. I mean, we could be wrong about that, but it does appear that's the case.
Yeah,
So,
I personally find that humans have value in two separate regards, both for their own individual lives, because any one of us can affect change in the world. We can make an alteration to this material reality, even in some small way, that affects the course of the future. We can build a statue and it'll be there for hundreds of years. We can help someone who's sick with their medical bills and make another person's life better. Anything we can do to affect what's happening in reality, that's a thing we can only do while we're alive. So life is very, very precious for that reason. And then...
But do you think it has inherent value? Like, inherently?
I'd say... I may be misunderstanding what inherent means in this context.
It means not that you have a potential value, but simply the act of, just say a baby's born, does that life have an inherent value, regardless of what outcome or what possibilities that you're looking at? Is simply the fact that a human is there, does it have intrinsic value like value not associated with what it can do, but just value for being,
Well,
existing.
I guess that depends on beauty in the eye of the beholder kind of thing. Like, what is it that the observer values? Do you value energy? Do you value matter? If every atom is precious, then a collection of atoms that's capable to move under its own volition is pretty fucking cool. The parents certainly value the baby, but I would argue that a person's potential is part of their inherent value. Even though it's potential, that potential is a value that a rock doesn't have, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of would reject that in part because there isn't just potential good that can be done, but also potential harm. Um, like I would go with the scarcity of life for why I would say we have inherent value, but potentiality. Yeah, that's a difficult one because I think that some humans have done more harm than good, kind of thing. Like, you take Hitler or I can't remember the guy's name. He invented both leaded petrol and CFCs. God, I'll never. He was the worst inventor of all time. Like, seriously.
Oh, that poor person. I mean, somebody had to be the worst inventor, but yeah, I can't remember his name either. I heard an NPR story on him once, like how he kept...
Thomas Midgley. Oh, yeah, Thomas Midgley. The worst inventor. He invented leaded petrol, which has, been an awful invention. Lead poisoning is insanely dangerous and still affects us today. Some people believe that the low IQ rates of people is due to the lead in the atmosphere. I don't know about that. I really don't. He invented CFCs, which caused the hole in the ozone layer. He actually died when he actually had polio. So I invented a bed to get him up. It had all these wires strung out so it would get him up in the morning so he could stand on his feet. And he died when he was strangled, like got caught in the wires and was strangled to death.
That's
world's worst inventor. He was terrible. Terrible.
That's a big oof. But he's obviously an extreme example, being the worst. There's I can't think of the name of this guy either, but he's the one who came up with the process for extracting nitrogen from the atmosphere to create fertilizer on industrial scales. And there's pluses and minuses to his invention. He's also the guy who came up with xylon gas that the Nazis later appropriated after his death, which is most unfortunate. But on just the nitrogen thing, he made it possible to vastly produce much more food, and human population spiked and is still spiking as a direct result of that. Prior to that, we were stuck at around 1.5 billion for a relatively long time. Suddenly, much more food, better health, and more humans. So, plus side, better nutrition for the humans who were around. Minus side, we're kind of overpopulating the hell out of this planet. And that's having huge consequences of its own.
And plus, the inventions that he did led to the invention of Cyclone B as well, which was used to the farming techniques. That's what you're talking about. The guy who invented nitrogen infusion.
I'm not sure infusion. It's another NPR story that I then looked up a little bit of additional detail, but I'm not sure exactly what the process is called. But it's an industrial method of harvesting nitrogen from the atmosphere to create modern fertilizers.
So that technology went on to make Cyclone B, which was used to kill off Jewish people.
Mm-hmm. But that, of course, was not his intention. Again, any invention can be misused.
No, he won the Nobel Prize for basically saving so many people from starvation from the use of
Yeah,
fertilizer.
and I dare
Fritz
say
Haber
rightly
was
so.
his name.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
so
the reason NPR did the story on him, because he's responsible for saving the most lives and also killing the most lives
yes,
with
yep.
a single
So
act, you know?
yep, he killed more than sort of 1 million Jews, but he saved 1 billion people essentially from starvation. So, and the interesting thing is that he wasn't he wasn't directly involved in Zyklon B, but it was his work that was used to do it, which is it's one of those things. It's like, the original Nobel Prize was given to Nobel, who basically um,
Alfred Nobel, he was a tycoon, a mining tycoon, thanks to dynamite.
yeah,
And
dynamite. Yeah, he invented
yeah,
dynamite.
and it was used as a tool. But then people started using it in war. It was some of the earlier explosives around the turn of the century, because it was very, very effective. And he felt really bad that his invention had been turned to the purposes of killing humans. And so that's why he made the Peace Prize one of the prizes as part of his legacy, in addition to science and chemistry and medicine and literature.
What as if by assuming a God, you suddenly find that life is all worthwhile after all? If it was that simple, we wouldn't have to be having this discussion. I think this, essentially, I ask myself, why do I care? Why do I care not just about myself and my children, but why do I think I often care in general? Well, if I didn't, I wouldn't.
Give me one sec. Oh, I gotta make another emoticon thing for a band hammer. I really do.
Oh,
I
nice.
really do.
Yeah, you probably
Yeah,
have
yeah.
a slot open by now.
Oh, I certainly do. Look, I've just been all over the place recently.
Oh, yeah, fair
Yeah,
enough.
yeah, the Amarià, the yeet. Yeah, I just want to hammer with yeet across it. Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Look, you're happy to. I'm happy to come in, but that's just too much. Yeah, sorry. It's just too much.
Belong to a species that would have got this far. It may sound a platitudinous answer, but I think there's some force to it. If we didn't have human solidarity, if we didn't realize that we are...
Oh, sorry. I did get a super chat through all that drama, right? I
Oh,
do
yeah.
apologize. Yeah, I'm sorry, Bruce. I absolutely. My daughter's graduation party today. Couldn't be proud of my little atheist. Yeah, absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Proud of critical thinking for $5. Thank you so much, Bruce. I really appreciate it. But yeah, absolutely. Look, even if they're not an atheist, as long as they have critical thinking, it's just, that is the goal. They think about things. It's amazing. So congratulations, Bruce. But it's great to hear that, mate. Great to hear that.
brothers and sisters one with another, that we have responsibilities, duties to one another, that these are not merely reciprocal in evolutionary terms. In other words, you be nice to me, I'll look out for you, but that they can involve real ties, real bonds of affection, friendship, even love. If we didn't know that we were able to think like that, we'd be exempt quite a large minority of humans who are born without this, the sociopaths and psychopaths, who I suppose we have to concede are also made in God's image, if you accept that tautology. It leaves nothing really unexplained. That would tell us why we had warm feelings for one another, and also explain why we were here instead of having joined the species that went, all the other ones that went out of business.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird, like why God invented psychopaths, people with no sense of empathy whatsoever. Like we know that that's not a, it's not a choice. We know that it's inherently a part of their neurology. Like, why is this being created? Like, what's the point here?
Yeah.
It's such a weird thing.
It's either imperfect designer or imperfect, and of course, there's always that excuse. Oh, well, it's the fall that caused the flaws in reality. Humans did it to themselves, or some nonsense. But I'm still curious exactly what the hell the image of God is supposed to mean, because according to the same Bible that says that, no human has ever seen God, except possibly Adam and Eve. That's not really clear. But there's a whole long passage where Moses pleads with Yahweh to let Moses see him. And he says, no,
Yes.
mortals can't look upon my glory, yada, yada. You can see my backside, but you can't see my face. And
Right.
all this business. So how do we know? Like, if we really were in the image of God, wouldn't our faces also murder all other humans who lay eyes on them?
Well, yeah, I don't know. Like, sort of, I've had it explained to me before, just a sort of steel man, where they're coming from, that we're sort of a reflection of God, where, like in a lake, I think it was described to me, like, it's sort of not the real image, not the actual image, because that would be too much, but we're sort of like a washy reflection. And I'm like, well, okay, but
A degraded Xerox kind of thing.
yeah. So it's sort of been put through a filter. It's got an Instagram filter that stops the God rays or something. Like, I don't know, but yeah, that's how it was explained to me, that it doesn't do that because it's a pale reflection of the godly godness of Goddy God. Like that's sort of
Who also happens to look like an ape, but okay.
Well, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I've never met God. That would be cool, though. Like a gorilla Grod. Like that would be pretty cool.
That would explain the jealousy and the rage bits. Gorillas are
Actually,
very
it would,
territorial.
wouldn't
Yeah.
Yeah. And Bruce, for coming through with $5 again, I'd like Hitch to cuff me if I have to have a gay experience. At that point, Brucifer, it would probably be necrophilia. I'm sorry. It just would be. I think you'd miss the boat on the gay experience. Although, if it's anything like the Iron/Bronze Age Jerusalem, I'm sure Hitch will be getting up from the dead anytime now, walking around and,
Yeah, because I mean, if Hitch came back from the dead, especially at this point, if he just popped up out of his grave and said, "Well, that's quite remarkable," I think it would go a long way to convincing him.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if he spent a few days in hell in the meantime. That would probably assist as well. Would do a lot for their credibility if that would happen. But I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm not going to hold.
Under the same divine supervision, I might add, including humanoid species like the Cro-Magnons and the Neanderthals, who it's quite clear buried each other with care and with love, looked out for one another, and so forth and so on, but somehow didn't make some divine grade. Do you see where I'm going with this? I do hope so.
Well, Peter Singer, what he thinks is extremely disturbing. I agree actually very much with Christopher that we find ourselves with these feelings and morality within us. I don't think that's the issue, because my Christian faith guarantees those to Christopher Hitchens, as it does to me. The problem is the rational justification of this against the view of someone like Singer, who is taking his extrapolations from evolution to a logical conclusion and ending up with views that a newborn baby is of no more value than a dog, a chimp, or a pig. In other words, devaluing human beings.
Okay,
I think I see the problem in his understanding. He's saying that from an objective standpoint, there's no more value in one living thing than another. It's only two humans from our subjective point of view. Much like I care about my cup of coffee much more than I do about the guy who just got banhammered cup of coffee. I don't care about his coffee. It's no bearing to me at all.
Yeah. Well, do you notice how now he's dropped the intrinsic or inherent value off the front of it? Like, this is the conflation that he's making. He's now switched terms from whether something has intrinsic value or inherent value to something has value at all. Of course we value these things. Of course we do. But that's not to say what intrinsic value is. Intrinsic value means sort of mind independent. It just has value. regardless of stance or perspective, like sort of an objective value kind of thing. No, not, I understand what Singer's saying. I probably would disagree with Singer. I probably would. I would say that, hey, life is rare. That gives it value. Might not be a huge amount of value, but it's still some sort of value. So I would probably disagree slightly. But he's now basically conflating, and I think he's doing it on purpose, saying, hey, Singer thinks that we have no intrinsic value. How he didn't think we have any value at all. No, wrong. You're misrepresenting them.
And that seems to me to be a very serious direction in which society is going.
And I just want to add, do you notice he says the logical conclusion of evolution? Why is that? That is not the logical conclusion of evolution.
Yeah, I'm like, what can that even mean? Like, I understand it's part of a Christian narrative that because humans were specially created, evolution has effectively come to an end. Humans are the best there's ever been and the best there will ever be. There will never be a species better than us. That's the destiny of man.
Right.
But I don't think evolution itself actually has a logical conclusion. If assuming we don't wipe out life on this planet, sunburn out, all that stuff, we're going to keep evolving.
No, I think what he's getting at, I think what he's angling towards, badly and sort of really gratuitously incorrectly, is that if all life has equal value, then there's no point to valuing your fellow human being. There's no point to trying to work with them if it's just survival of the fittest. Just tread on people as you get higher is the logical outcome to evolution. And it's often made as this. You don't think so? Okay.
No. I think that may be what he's implying. I just disagree with that. Because...
absolutely.
Certainly there are parasites within society, but civilization itself wouldn't function if everyone behaved that way. We'd be Mad Max up in here.
Well, I was going to say it's a misunderstanding of how evolution works, because the only way that societal species survive and thrive is by working together. That is exactly the mechanisms that they use. The logical outcome from evolution of a social species is to encapsulate more and more organisms into that social hierarchy, into that social structure, because the more things they adapt to that social structure, the more powerful and better equipped to survive they will be. So you're completely and utterly wrong because you don't understand evolution, Lennox. Sorry.
Teach people that they're no different from animals. It may just be they'll start to behave like animals.
Does evolution teach there's no difference between humans and animals? Well, humans are animals.
Mm-hmm.
But evolution doesn't teach there's no difference between humans and other animals.
No, and in fact, it's a bit of an overgeneralization fallacy, because evolution teaches that there are differences between every kind of animal. That's literally the biodiversity.
Every species of animal. And what it also teaches is that all organisms are specialized for certain things, and they're good at certain things. And we're good at social interaction, thoughts, patterns. We're good at certain things. Like, it doesn't say there's no difference there. Like, that's not what evolution says in the slightest. You don't understand evolution, sir. You just don't. And this is a common thing with theists. They don't understand evolution, and they want to take evolution to what they see as its logical conclusion based upon the knowledge that they don't have, which is a problem.
It's always going to end up being a straw man, whether they intend it to be or not.
Yeah.
So what prevents me from going down that line is that I deny completely his premise. And his premise is there's nothing unique about human beings. I want to say there's something absolutely unique about them.
Yeah, we sweat a lot through the pores in our skin. How about that one? That is unique to human beings. Like every single pore sweats, and we have a magnificent cooling system for when we want to travel distances. How about that one, Lennox?
Our homeostasis. It costs us a bit in hydration. We have to drink a bit more.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it helps with thermal regulation over and above many other species. Not all, of course, but the ones that are better at it in a particular environment are specialized to that environment. Of course, we have difficulty with some environments too. Like, if we go into the Arctic, we have to start, adding other creatures' skins on top of our own in order to maintain heat. But, we can do that thanks to our tool using tricks and such. So we do have a few things that we do fairly well, yes.
Yeah.
But there's very little that we do that no other species does.
Yeah. No, I get you. I get you. Something that we do that no other species does. We kill each other over religion.
Well, yeah, you got me there.
Yeah.
Are, of course, animals, but they're more than that. They're created in the image of God, and that gives them infinite value and dignity. And we will jettison that at our peril. And I think it's being jettisoned in the name of a very seriously flawed philosophy, which is, as Nietzsche predicted,
Yeah, except no one said we should jettison anything to do with valuing human beings. Nobody said that. What? He's arguing with a complete straw man. He's arguing with a scarecrow.
I wonder how a mathematician justifies referring to anything as having infinite value.
Yeah. Does that mean if I go out and kill a whole bunch of people and Jeffrey Dahmer it up, that I still have value to society? Because I would argue you are progressed into the state of negative value for society. I think that at that point you have to be removed from society. You don't have infinite value.
If society is the composite value of all people within it.
Right.
And you kill one person who has infinite value, then you have potentially eradicated the entire value of all of society because it's infinite value.
Yeah. I mean, that's obviously,
it gets
silly.
Absurd pretty quick, yeah.
Oh, sure. But even if you want to say, humans have a extensive value, almost infinite value, right? Even if you want to say that, I strongly disagree. If you go out into society and you don't do one good thing to help your fellow humans, and you're a complete asshat, like you're RJ Clips to everybody you meet, right? Let's just use a current example here. You probably have a negative value to society. Like if you're not doing anything to help society and you're just being an ass, then you probably have a negative value. Like you don't help anything. I don't think you just because you're made in the image of God, you just have inherent. I would argue that someone like Jeffrey Dahmer has a very negative value to society. Like he doesn't get to be extolled as this person of great value just because of your religious beliefs. No, he doesn't have great value. There is nothing valuable about the person, right? What we value is the rights we give people and the systems that we put in place that give people those rights, because that's important for society. That's important to making the social fabric work. But we don't have to value that person. We just have to value the rights and the privileges that people have. So, that's my opinion anyway. That's my take.
Yeah, we have to value our values.
Very well said. Very well said.
exactly what will happen if you attempt to live out atheism to its consequences. It'll end up in madness.
What consequences?
I'm with it.
It'll end up in madness.
Yeah, it's
Care to support that statement in any way? No? Just going to assume that's where it ends up? I mean, what fallacy is this? We were just talking about fallacies.
Several fallacies. I mean, he'd have to say more to pick out specifically which one. Saying madness, he's got some kind of straw man built into his thinking. We don't know which
Sure.
one. He's probably assuming the consequent. He's definitely got an equivocation in there somewhere. Because I mean, what logical conclusion of atheism could you possibly be talking about? Because atheism only means we don't accept your God claim, John.
Right, and so the one that I point to is a slippery slope here, which is the fallacy that if one thing happens, it's necessarily other things will follow. So if we let atheism in and we don't treat people as infinitely valuable, then suddenly all these things will happen. You know, it's just going to be madness. That doesn't necessarily follow. It's not a very good. And he hasn't supported in any way of why atheism would descend in madness. Like, there's plenty of atheistic and secular societies out there. They haven't descended into madness. In fact, they're usually the most stable ones out there. If you look at the Nordic countries and Japan and places, okay, Japan might be a little bit of madness. I do agree. But it's very stable. People are very polite. There's actually sort of not a huge deal of crime. It's not the bedlam that you're describing here, Johnny boy.
Yeah, his slippery slope has a ski jump on it.
Yeah.
Where animals are worshipped, humans tend to be sacrificed. And if you look at ancient cultures, and some not so ancient, that would tend to be true. I remember when, if it wasn't Singer, it was one of his disciples. So
I might speed this up. I don't know why I didn't think of this. It's silly of me, isn't it? Oh, God, what am I doing? Does this even have a speed up?
What are any of us doing?
Oh, I don't know. More options? No, have I got it in the wrong thing? Press and hold to fast forward. I'm not doing that.
his own baby daughter was no more to him than would be, say, a rat or a flea or, well, let's leave it at that. I remember thinking, I'm not his daughter. But my second thought is, I'm glad I'm not his pet rat either.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it seems he doesn't have a great deal of sort of love to serve for anyone or...
End up in madness.
I think it's actually Chesterton says somewhere that where animals are worshipped.
Hold on. I'll switch to the other player. I'm so sorry. This is professionalism at its best, ladies and gentlemen. Professionalism at its best. Is it that one?
As you know, the atheist position is...
Yep. And what time do we have? We have... Because I can speed up this one, right? Speed, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 59:47.
23. Oh, 59:47. Gotcha. How do I tell where it is?
Of witch doctors.
Right.
Christ put
Those who tell the Jews, why are you wasting it? And you know...
Look, time travel, folks. We did it.
Ancient cultures, and some not so ancient, that would...
This is pain. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
to be true. I remember when, if it wasn't Singer, it was one of his disciples said that his own baby daughter was no more to him than would be, say, a rat or a flea or, well, let's leave it at that. I remember thinking, my first thought was, I'm glad I'm not his daughter. But my second thought is, I'm glad I'm not his pet rat.
yeah, exactly.
Because it seems he doesn't have love to spare for anyone or anything. Look, animal rights can be overdone, and certainly have been, especially people who object to medical experiments in a historical manner. But we have learned a great deal in the recent past about our kinship with and commonalities with other creatures. And we've discovered amazing things about the capacity, including the capacity for family life, solidarity, society building, and so on among pigs, monkeys, dolphins, and others. And we know, because of the genome program, of our kinship with other much less advanced creatures, and that we are only ourselves half a chromosome away from being chimpanzees. The one thing that is impossible to swear with is the idea of us being made in the image of God. That's clearly over.
Yeah, so yes, he's right. Like, evolution has given us a great deal. And let's not face it, just not with other animals, but also kinship with other races of humans, even though race is sort of just an arbitrary designation, like, all humans. We have this understanding that the differences between them are almost nothing. Like, they're literally nothing. It doesn't really exist. Yeah.
It clearly isn't.
Anthropomorphically, animalistically, whichever way you slice it, we are.
Is that too fast? Someone give me some feedback. Is that too fast? Is it fine?
I can follow it, but it's kind of on the edge.
I only have yeah. What do you use for playing this kind of stuff?
I open it in a Chrome tab, and then I pop the tab out and move it off to the side. That way I can just share the tab, which lets me switch around when I want to show other tabs like a definition or something. But also it
is a
gives me
good
that
idea.
that control for 1.25. I actually started doing it because when I tried to run something locally in Media Player and share that, it was
Yeah.
glitching. And so I'm like, okay, we'll just
Oh.
put it on a Chrome tab, and it worked. So the other things are just side benefits. It's almost an evolutionary process. We made one minor
Oh.
change to correct one problem and got all kinds of unintended benefits.
As you know, the atheist position is the following: that of the many hundreds,
As
if not thousands of
What
gods
the-
and religions that human,
Oh no!
Okay.
Oh no!
I am getting confused. Wait, did it just skip back? Oh, I hate you.
Right? Because
those who tell the Jews, "Why are you wasting your time?" The good news has already.
What do you remember the timestamp?
I remember the last one was 59:47, but we went forward a little bit since then. Let me scroll back and see if I can see.
Why is
because when one of his disciples used it to put the ear of somebody, Christ put the ear back on.
Crap! I don't think
Very seriously, because
it's not displaying in a resolution high enough for me to read it.
very soon coming to an end, and that he said, you may not say that the preachments of Jesus of Nazareth are all right, even if you don't accept the religious, for example, whereas is it not written that I come not to bring a peace but a sword?
first of all, I don't think they're all myths. I think they're
Of the Gospels.
tree itself. So I don't find it.
We'll
it's
get
not
there.
like-
He claimed sometimes
of course, as the creator,
all the graves of Jerusalem. These are, it also explain why we
59:47.
devalue.
worshipped. Okay, in that case, in the image of what God are the others made? It gets you nowhere. It's a strict. That's clearly over.
It clearly
And that we are only ourselves half a chromosome away from being chimpanzees.
Okay. Okay. You know what? I'm going to shut all the other ones down because that's gonna be a disaster. Okay.
The
I've got it.
crisis of
I've
many
got it.
alternate Hitchenses.
Oh, the many, the Hitchens, the many and the one problem. The many and the one problem.
Multi-hitchitude.
From being chimpanzees. The one thing this is impossible to square with is the idea of us being made in the image of God. That's clearly over.
it clearly isn't.
Anthropomorphically, animalistically, whichever way you slice it, we
Right.
are
It is over.
we are primates. So in that case, in the image of what God are the others made? It gets you nowhere.
It is over. Like outside of YouTube and certain apologetic circles, this isn't a question. Like evolution isn't a question. They think that it's like, oh, scientists are still debating it. More scientists
Nope.
are coming over to the young Earth creation. No. Like,
It's embarrassing, frankly.
Yeah, it's over. It's done. Like this is one of the most solid theories we have ever had. Like, yeah, it's over. Just accept it, people.
It's a strictly meaningless statement.
It's interesting,
There's no value.
my geneticist friends in Oxford, when the similarity between the chromosomes and so on, the DNA of animals with humans, was discovered, they said, well, we always told you so. It shows that it doesn't lie in the chromosomes. There's a lot bigger story to be told, I think, and it would be very premature to close the discussion on that basis. Stephen Jay Gould, was it he, who said that we're not?
Did he just quote Stephen Jay Gould?
I think he's about to quote Stephen Jay Gould.
Oh no! If you get it wrong, you are going to be a Gould misquoted. That poor man. Gould has been misquoted so often. Like, oh.
Yep, I just finished another video where who the hell was it who's talking? It doesn't matter. It's some apologist or other, and he quotes Stephen Jay Gould talking about how the fossil record says that we are just making things up. There's no actual evidence for evolution in the fossil record, and I'm like, my guy, you realize we can check quotes,
Yeah,
and he never ever said that, you know.
8% chimpanzee, we're 100% human.
Compatible statement.
8% chimpanzee. No, that's not accurate.
So that would make us 108% of a being. Are we sure Lennox is a mathematician?
Yeah.
Ask another question in a moment that's connected to this. Just a word on the format. Because we did get started a little bit late, I do want to still keep the 35 minutes we set aside for this kind of give and take. This is a very important moment in the evening, so I don't want to sell that short. Absolutely. So we may go a little bit past 8 o'clock, make sure that we have this full exchange. This next question does address some of the issues brought up in the last exchange. 63% of Americans do not accept evolution, and that percentage may be behind.
Oh, that is depressing. 63%. Is that still true?
I don't think so. This is
How long ago was
conceivably
this?
quite out of date. Well, Hitch died like 11 years ago, and this was before he even got sick, so it's quite some time back.
Okay, United States, 2009. Pew Research is the last I've got, apparently. Which is still like, over a decade ago. Belief in evolution, yeah. So it's 54% apparently back then. 54% believe in evolution. So I guess it's not as bad as it used to be. But the thing is, like, how much scientists? It's like, so we're adding up belief in evolution guided by a supreme being and belief in evolution due to natural processes. So that is like 95% of scientists back in 2009, which is,
I've got a July 2015 from Pew that says 66% of adults say that scientists agree humans have evolved over time.
Right.
That's a convoluted
That's
way to
still
say
depressing.
it, but it definitely should be considerably higher. But we do see the percent going up tangibly over just a span of a few short years.
Yeah. Yeah, so a 2013 survey in Australia said that 80% of Australians believe in evolution.
That's better.
So that's more reasonable to the figures that scientists believe in. So
and I think a lot of it comes down to evolution being itself a somewhat politicized and loaded term, thanks to the controversies with creationists and others. Because if you say, do you believe that species change over time? Do you believe that the traits of a population can be changed through selection pressure? All these various, ask any farmer, is it possible to breed your cows to produce more milk? He'll say absolutely. But once you use the word evolution, that's where people go, oh, no.
Oh,
I mean,
everyone
even Kent Hovind has affirmed every single point of evolution is fact. He just won't call it evolution.
Yep.
Higher in the audience for this evening. The question for you, John, would be, what are the long-term consequences of this kind of mistrust of science?
Well, I think, first of all, this could be a discussion for an entire debate.
About 6 minutes.
I would want to know, first of all, what you mean by evolution. If you mean simply what Darwin observed, that is the fact that natural selection produces variation and so on, then that's not a particularly controversial thing we can observe.
That's evolution. What are you talking about?
Observe it. If you mean by evolution, the notion that by...
Oh, it's evolution now. Evolution. I love the way...
Evolution.
Evolutionists assemble. We have work to do. Yeah. That always makes me laugh, like there's something inherently evil about the position. It's just... What are you talking about? Evolution isn't evil or good or anything. It just is. It just does what it does. It's not like it's not
it's like orbital mechanics. Oh, you think the moon goes around the Earth, huh? Come on now.
Yeah.
Unguided, mindless processes.
Oh, like you believe in the evil theory of gravity, like it's just...
It's a mindless process. How could you? Don't you know that people bash the religious for never coming up with scientific theories that can be tested and observed and whatnot, but I will have you know that the Discovery Institute came up with a theorem of gravity that involves tiny little Jesus particles that pull you down towards the surface of the Earth. And here we are being held to the surface of the Earth. Jesus confirmed. Haha.
Wow. Is that true?
No.
Look, yeah, I know, but it's just one of those things that people say, and you're like, is that true? Because I wouldn't put it past them. Hey, like I really wouldn't put it past them to say, hey, scientists found the God particle. It's actually Jesus. You know, like
Yes,
I
yes.
just. I know that you were joking, but deep down, just one little voice said, "But is it true
Well,
that they
yeah,
said?"
that's the problem of the state of the discourse is it's impossible to satirize because you cannot get
Yes.
so extreme that it's obvious you're kidding. It can't be done.
Yep, it's Poe's law. Poe's law strikes again.
Mm-hmm.
It confusion everywhere.
Life originally arose and comes to
It's the inevitable conclusion of atheism. It's madness. It's madness.
Holy shit, Lennox was right.
It was right.
be what it is. I myself, as a scientist, find that unconvincing. And I find it unconvincing as a mathematician, particularly because at the heart of life, there is the database of DNA. And when we notice anything with a semiotic nature, language that is, language like 3.5 billion letters in exactly the right order, we immediately make an inference upwards, not downwards, to say that by whatever the mechanisms involved of getting this, it bears the telltale mark of an intelligence standing beside it. So it seems to me that there's a very healthy scientific debate to be had about the reach of evolution. And so we need to define our terms very carefully. But not being an American, I can't really predict what's going on in here. The fact that people
Well, I mean, but how do you know that? Like, you're saying it has the telltale signs of a designer. How do you know that? Like, this is the thing. Like, you're basically assuming that it's been designed and saying, well, it has all the telltale signs.
Yeah,
But
what signs? What tell us?
What signs?
Show us what you mean. Like if I come across a watch on a beach and I go, huh, this looks
Yeah.
designed. And then Mark comes up to me and goes, well, what do you mean? Then I can point to specific features and be like, look at these tiny fucking gears, yo.
Yeah.
I can show how it looks designed to me, how I'm interpreting that.
Oh, the watchmaker analogy just it like it's the worst. It's the worst argument. It's the worst. Well, I mean that's a bold statement. There's some pretty bad ones.
They are all pretty bad, yeah. Although I do have to agree, it's the worst as far as backing up even a deistic god, because you may recall that one apologist that I covered, and then after doing a second video on him, he just deleted his channel. It was the watchmaker argument. He did the watchmaker so badly, he kind of accidentally disproved every god.
Wow, that's I'm not even mad. That's impressive.
I know. I actually applauded him. I'm like, I did not think that. I can't even do that.
Right. I want to know what that argument is now. Holy crap. Yeah.
people are suspicious seems to me to show that there's a real debate to be had. And all the evidence is certainly not, in my opinion, on one side.
The figures on American belief in things like virgin birth and the devil and their doubt of things like, in my opinion, wildly exaggerated and padded and are produced by leading questions asked of the sort of people who happen to be in their kitchens all day and have nothing else to do. And what they tend to show mainly when you interrogate them is they don't even know what it is they don't believe in. I would instance Governor Michael Huckabee, for example, who says, of course, he doesn't believe that he's...
Yeah, and to his point, you don't know what he's talking about, Lennox, because you misrepresented evolution. So you don't know exactly how it works either. This is the thing. You're making well, the science is still up in the air without actually understanding the theory of evolution completely at all.
Yeah,
Because
it's much like that fellow who was in the chat earlier. You know, the fact that he doesn't understand evolution says more about him than it does about the theory.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, there's people that don't want to understand it or misrepresent it on purpose. You know, I'm looking at you, Hovind, kind of thing. He may not just have a good grasp on it, because if you do think that humans not working together is somehow the end result of evolution, then you've got the wrong end of the stick there. You don't understand social species in the theory of evolution. But you know, I mean, I don't think he's purposely sort of, you know, like Hovind obviously doesn't want to understand it and misrepresents it at all corners because he has got an agenda to follow. I don't think this guy's doing that, but you can't say, hey, the evidence is still up in the air when you don't understand the evidence and you don't understand the theory.
descended from apes. well, the theory of evolution is not that a couple and a half of years descended from apes. He may know something about his family tree that I've also suspected in my time, but it wouldn't invalidate the general proposition.
Poor
you
Chance.
know about Darwinism are the ones who say they don't believe in it, which isn't a fair test.
Look, I just want to say, pot calling the kettle black. I mean, seriously. Big Bad Mama, how dare you leverage that against me with everything that goes on in your channel that's absolutely hilarious, and I love it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was actually a little miffed when I discovered Big Bad Mama had a channel because none of you told me sooner. What the hell, guys? But the content is hilarious.
Yes, and I always talk about Big Bad Mama's channel because it makes me laugh. Like the choral singers get me every time because, like, I don't know where he got the chorus line from that does their like music that read them out, but this family are the worst singers on the face of the planet. Like, he must have gone down and auditioned for terrible singers and like got the cream of the crop because it is and the children look like they're being held hostage, and it's just everything about it is so awful. It's funny.
It is cringe, as the kids these days say.
Oh, it is wildly cringe, sir.
Of anything. I'll just add on.
How you do, fellow kids.
Not being descended from, but having things in common with our primate cousins. We do, as Darwin says, bear the unmistakable stamp of our lowly origin. We do grow a coat of hair when we're in the womb and then shed it in the womb at about 3.5 months. We do have vestigial tails. We do have appendices.
Yep, and atavisms where the tail comes back.
Mm-hmm. I always wanted to have a tail.
That would be cool. That would be cool. I think that it would be horrible for sitting down and things like that. Like, we're not...
It could be uncomfortable, yes.
Yeah, a tail is not really designed for sitting, so designed.
Oh, yeah, so you gave the game away, Mark. Now everyone knows.
Oh, no. Yeah, so well, I was kind of more thinking about, like, prosthetic tails and stuff. People have had trouble sitting. Like, I've seen some actors
cosplayers, too. Especially the articulated tails, rather than just, like, the limp fabric, because that's just, like, it's like a cape. It just... But you know what would be really cool? Wings. Tails might be fun, but wings.
Yeah.
Although I heard the story about this one dude who got into a lot of trouble when he figured out how to make his own wings. So maybe not.
Are you talking about Icarus?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. just checking. You know what? I don't know. I feel like wings would be a pain in the ass. Like, seriously, like you have to like get through doorways, and maybe I'm just a negative person, but I'm thinking like I have trouble with an umbrella. I don't know how I would deal with wings. You know, like. Yeah, I don't know, but would be cool to fly. I think that wingless flight, like Superman kind of thing, would be the best option. I think that would be awesome. I think wings would be cumbersome. And
like some kind of anti-gravity belt or something. Where we can like tilt like a Segway to control our direction and speed.
Yeah, where's my anti-gravity belt, Future? Yeah. Where is it?
These that are for the breaking down of stuff on the savannah that we no longer need to eat. And we do have wisdom teeth and other dentition that we don't any longer require because we were adapted to an environment a savannah environment that we've long ago abandoned. So saying that you're 100% human is only another way of saying that you're very much 98% primate. Voila. Otherwise, it's a distinction without a difference.
Cool. I'll ask this question. This is addressed to Christopher, but again, for both of you to address. And I believe one of your early books, Letters to a Young Contrarian. So
those chairs look really comfortable. Just saying.
They do. I'm envious. They're fancy chairs. They're very stylish.
Yeah. Yeah, they're dinner party chairs. Like cigars in the den chairs. I love them. Always
a glass of brandy.
Always when I go down to the coffee shop, I love to get like the big leather chairs. Like sometimes they have, you know, with the little table and stuff. It's just delightful. I feel so sophisticated, you know.
Maybe an interesting answer for you to get.
Do you guys have much of a coffee culture where you are?
Not a lot. There's a couple of boutique coffee shops, but they very much have culture in them. Like, it's not, we have like the drive-through coffee places like Dunkin' Donuts and whatnot. But then there's places like there's a shop in my town called Coffee Connection, and while they do sell coffee, they have like puzzle games and board games and Wi-Fi, of course, because people just, the coffee is like an accessory. You're really there for the atmosphere and the hangout and the people who come, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for someone who has left theism, but was raised in an institution like Sanford or in a church and is still in that institution? What advice would you give that person?
You'll feel so much better if you leave it behind you and go and study literature instead, and the consolations of philosophy and the beauties of science. I think these are things that are infinitely more awe-inspiring and wonderful and majestic than any invocations of the burning bush or the immoral doctrine of vicarious redemption, whereby a single human is made the scapegoat for all sins, and we absolve ourselves not just of sin, but of our responsibility by throwing our sins on him. A disgusting idea, fortunately, never happened. The cultural question that remains.
I don't want somebody else to be responsible for the things I do wrong. I want me to be responsible for the things I do wrong. I want to take responsibility myself. I don't want someone to take them from me.
Yeah, I actually have a very hard time even accepting help from someone. Like when I need help and someone says, "Hey, let me help you with that." It's hard for me to even just go, "Okay, I actually need this," and allow it, you know? The idea of someone else being put to death for what I've done, no. Even if it's literally true, I can't accept that.
Yeah, I think it's a horrible idea that because I've done something wrong, somebody else is, killed to wipe away that blemish. That's a horrible idea. It's kind of, well, and the amount of people that are sort of like, Jesus died for my sins, so I can do what I want. It doesn't. It's kind of this get out of jail free card where you're not taking responsibility for the things that you do wrong anymore. And so you have no incentive to change that behavior. There's no consequence for it. It's just Yeah,
as my old friend Dave used to say, they tell me Jesus died for my sins, so it would be sacrilegious if I didn't do everything in my power to make sure he got his money's worth.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you ever encountered Perry the Preacher. That man was scary. He was scary because he believed that there's nothing he could do that was wrong, up to and including taking somebody else's life. He would say, "Oh, well, I don't want it in the secular consequences, but there's no sin involved for me." And it was actually quite I wasn't scared of him, but it's like that is a frightening thought to have somebody in that mindset of there is nothing that I can do that's wrong, including any kind of crime you can mention, including any kind of behavior you can mention. Nothing is wrong because it's been paid for up front, kind of thing. It's horrifying.
Yeah,
but,
even in the traditional Catholic sense, there is nothing you can do that, as long as you go confess it to a priest and then do whatever the fuck he says, that you can't be forgiven for.
Yeah.
I think is this: how are people going to live when they've given up the supernatural and the superstitious? Are we still going to need? I would say we are still going to need the numinous and the transcendent. That's innate in us too, as is reason, as is morality. And so the great struggle is going to be how we find consolation and beauty and reflection where we have come to terms with the fact that we don't have a divine dictator to solve our problems for us, and that the heavens are empty, and that our prayers are not answered, and that we're alone with one another and have to make the best of it. I submit that that's going to be the great problem for civilization from now on, and a lot of energy, moral as well as aesthetic, is going to have to be put into solving. But the beginning of wisdom is to realize you must emancipate yourself from the idea that you are the plaything of a supernatural boss. Fortunately, that's not true.
Well, I don't live in America, but I would be very sad to think that in any university, a person that changed their worldview in either direction would no longer feel comfortable, because I work at a university where there are all kinds of worldviews, and that, to my mind, is the wonderful thing about being there.
Yeah, it depends on the university. It really does depend on the university, mate.
Dr. Lennox's privilege is showing a little bit.
Yes, yeah, and you're in England, which is a lot more secular than some of the institutions in America. And yeah, I mean, it's most of the big, especially the Ivy Leagues and sort of Yale, Harvard, things like that. You're changing your worldview isn't going to make a difference. But if you're in sort of what did they say
Biola
it was
University.
Right, or one of these kind of places, then yeah, changing your worldview might be very, very problematic, especially if it's run by like the Catholic Church or the certain churches kind of thing. I think the Mormons have their own university as well, which is just
Brigham Young, yeah.
okay, yeah. So yes, privilege. You're right. He has never encountered the sort of religious bigotry that Hitchens has encountered in his life.
Yeah, he's a white dude who was born into Christianity, born into
Right.
relative means, and has
Mhm.
just never strayed from that path. So he has
Yep.
no idea what it's like to be anything else.
Yep.
So I would very much hope a person could still find a lot of room and space. That's why universities are so important, that people are free to make these decisions and discuss them. So as to, you would agree with that, Christopher?
Very much so, yeah.
Yes, exactly. I'm delighted, by the way, that Christopher admitted that in that answer that he believes in the transcendent. That might lead me to ask the question where it comes from, but perhaps for another time.
It's a perfectly good question. It comes from, it's a fusion, I think. I can only speak for myself because I think, as James says in the varieties of religious experience, you may not doubt that people have them, or you shouldn't anyway, you should grant that they do. You can't make them applicable objectively. They're subjective to the person concerned, but I would say it's roughly where the erotic meets love, meets landscape, meets music and poetry. There's a junction a lot of people, I hope, will be familiar with. If not, I recommend that you try it, and then try it again, even more intensely. For example, I wrote a book once about a famous building called the Parthenon, without which I could not be, without which our civilization couldn't be. Pre-Christian, by the way, as is a huge amount of the civilization that Habermas claims to be inspired by. That to one side. The symmetry and the beauty.
Oh, I love that jab. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah. No, nobody likes Habermas except apparently Cameron Bertuzzi, but that's a whole separate thing. No, I rather, and I enjoy his description in part because he doesn't have a succinct description for it the way he seems to do for so many other concepts. He's like, it's almost like he has to do the same thing as a stoned hippie in the basement, saying like it's music, it's eroticism, it's landscape, all fusing together.
Yeah.
And that's a way we convey complex ideas that don't neatly fit into our cognitive boxes. He's talking about an experience.
Would you sort of say that, yeah, it's sort of an emergent experience from a number of different aesthetic properties specific to that person, right? Because you might have a transcendent experience, and I'm using that term sort of very loosely, from a certain bit of music at a certain time, a certain bit of emotion at a certain time, sort of all rolled into one. I mean, I remember like having a marvelous day in a market, and Pachelbel's Canon was being played over the top. I don't know if you know the score. It's it's just Pachelbel's Canon in C, and it was just sort of that idea of being one with everything, and just sort of getting this sense of something bigger. And I know that is, there's nothing mystical about it. There's nothing, not mystical in the sense of being supernatural. There's nothing about it. It's just a sense of interconnected with other things because of a emergent perception based upon a number of different emotions and situations, environments. So I think that's what he's talking about, kind of thing. I think that's what
it's those moments that cross the emotional threshold and become more than the everyday, that cement themselves on their memory. Because even as you were talking, I was calling to mind. First, I was thinking about how churches and other religious experiences often try to utilize this fusion of emotional infusing aspects to create an overwhelming experience so that people feel the Holy Spirit, as people put it. But I was also thinking of experiences in my own life where things just happened to line up. Like a really, really quick story from when I was an over-the-road truck driver. I was walking into this truck stop, at sunset. So there's already landscape, time, place, sunsets, already a semi-special time. And there was this couple with like a couple of bags of stuff, and they had a sign saying heading west. I was heading east, so it was a non-starter. But I talked to him for a minute, and I said, what are you doing? Where are you going? What's the idea? And TLDR, the girl had run away from home because she wanted to go to LA to become an actress. And her boyfriend, instead of stopping her, said, I'll come with you because your dreams are more important than any of this mundane nonsense in our lives. And,
Right.
Of course, from an adult perspective, I realized that's a terrible idea. But I was kind of emotionally driven by the moment to be like, you know what? Maybe it'll work out for these two. And if it doesn't, they'll learn some shit along the way.
Right.
And
I don't think. Yeah. I don't think life is that simple, though. I think that sort of when you go to do these things and you sort of go, well, we're going to commit to this and hope for the best. You don't know where it's going to take you. That's the thing. Like nobody ever knows where their life's going to end up from where they start, kind of thing. So I don't know. I don't know about that. Sorry, go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt. It's just
no, it's all good. So I'm pondering these ideas in my head as I walk back to the truck and the sunset's going, and then the song on the PA speaker out in the parking lot comes on, and it's the song that goes, "Stay with me because you're all I need," and I'm like, oh, what a fucking moment, That's what put it over the top for me. That cemented it into my memory.
That's beautiful. I like it. It's just sort of this, but you do get those feelings from people that are sort of, the idea that they are following their dreams or sacrificing for something greater than themselves, or, just sort of helping out humanity in some way. We do get those feelings, but I don't think there's anything mystical about it. I think it's just, I love the way that Hitchens put it, though. I really do.
The frozen music and poetry of the Parthenon and of the Greek style is an indispensable thing. If it were to be destroyed, I would feel sort of orphaned. But I have no interest in the religion that used to animate it. The cult of Pallas Athena is dead and void to me. So is the idea of Athenian imperialism. So are the so-called mysteries of Eleusis and the rest of all that's left from me are the schools of philosophy that are worth studying. So again, it's going to be a question: how do we assimilate what was to previous generations and previous religions and extinct faiths something so important? How do we keep the value that is innate in that without surrendering to the cults and illusions that so much animate it? These are very important cultural issues. And I submit that we can do it.
John, I'll give you the last response on this, and then we'll move to our closing
Well,
remarks.
just briefly, I just find it a bit difficult to see how a mindless, unguided process produces aesthetics of all these transcendent experiences.
That is literally the argument from incredulity. That is literally personal incredulity. You don't see how it occurred.
Okay, you don't see it. Learn more, bro. But it's also it really annoys me that Hitchens just gets done with this really beautiful exploration of these ideas, and how we can honor the legacy of the ancestors who we brought so much knowledge forward into the future and all of this. And Lennox's only reply is, well, I just don't see how it's possible. Like, you just crapped on the entirety of human history, my dude.
Mm-hmm. And the painstaking lessons that we've learnt along the way, kind of thing. I mean, it's not like we came out of Africa. Maybe he doesn't believe that, but let's just say we came out of Africa and suddenly we could create the Parthenon. No, it's not like we have a long, painful stumbling of discovering things, of learning, of it's sort of like morality when they sort of talk about, oh, well, God just gave us morality. It's like, well, we seem to have been stumbling and falling and getting it wrong and correcting things, and like you're ignoring this entire long line chain of humanity trying to figure shit out, basically.
Yeah, we paid for every single page in that book of knowledge. We paid for, we scrapped for, we've striven for, and our ancestors, all the way back, as far as we can see from where we are, all the way to the ability to control fire. And he wants to be like, nah, God gave it to us. Like,
right.
Fuck you,
dude. It seems to minimize the sort of the nobility of the human spirit to me. It seems to just say, well, and this is sort of when people sort of say, well, what's the point, kind of thing, in if the sun's going to explode, what's the point under your atheistic kind of mentality? And it's like, well, we don't know where we're going to end up or whether we will achieve it at all, but humanity has this history of going and doing, going sailing off into the sea, not knowing whether we'll return or whether land is at the other side. We just do it because that's the nobility of the human spirit. We want to know what's on the other side of that ocean.
Plot
we don't
twist.
know that we're coming back.
We are the transpermia. Sometime in the future, there will be, space Polynesians who just go off into the Black Ocean and occasionally find an island and set up shop.
Sure. I mean, you have to admire the Polynesians that put together sort of very crude boats and just launched with sort of, let's explore. We've got to know what's out there. That's sort of, that's something that humans do. And I love it. I love every second of it. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Segue into the closing remarks. Actually, we'll reverse the order of the opening remarks, and Professor Lennox will go first and have 5 minutes, and then after that, Mr. Hitchens will wrap up the evening.
Yeah, so that's bookmarking, which debates on YouTube they don't understand and don't do, which is silly because it's part of a formal debate process. So bookending, I'm so sorry, it's bookending. So if the first person introduces, like usually the affirmative, they're the one that makes the very last remark kind of thing. So they get the first opener, the other person responds, and it's fair that way because in the openings, the person that ended shouldn't be the person that ends the conclusion as well.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, Lennox. Wow. How slow was he walking over there in normal speed? I'm sorry.
Enjoyed the spirited
It's just about to speed it up, and I'm thinking, it's already sped up.
A very worthy opponent. In my closing remarks, I just want to address very briefly a point that has not been addressed. He said in his opening remark...
That's a bit of a no-no in debate, formal debates. You really shouldn't bring up things in your conclusion that you haven't already covered in the debate. But never mind. I'm really nitpicking at this point. I really am.
Just in passing, about man-made gods. That is, gods are the figment of our imagination. Well, I would agree that if God does not exist, then Freud can show us clearly how Christianity is an opiate, a comfort blanket, a flight from reality into an imaginary fantasy heaven of wish fulfillment. But if God does exist, then Freud will equally convincingly show us how atheism is a comfort blanket, a flight from the reality of coming face to face with our Creator.
How do you reckon that?
Atheism is a comfort blanket. Comfort for what?
Okay. I'm trying to put on a theist hat here. If God does exist, so God is real and you should be afraid, then atheism might be a comfort blanket because you can pretend he's not real so you don't have to be afraid. Maybe?
Well, maybe it's that you can sin and not be afraid because you're fooling. It's a comfort blanket in that way because otherwise you know that you're going to hell. Yeah, I don't know. It's very strange.
For literature, Czesław Miłosz wrote, "A true opium of the people is a belief in nothingness after death, the huge solace of thinking that our betrayal..."
How is that an opium?
That's just like it's kind of a projection kind of thing. It's like, dude, you're pretending that your death doesn't matter because you'll go to heaven and see all your family and et cetera, so there's no consequence. That's why that's an opiate. You're just projecting that onto the other side to say, oh, well, this is why your thing is a delusion. It tells you that John understands his belief is based on a delusion rather than evidence.
And like, I mean, I won't speak Van Beers, but I would like to live forever after. I don't want to die necessarily. Like it's just like eternal life sounds awesome, and I'd like that to be the case. But what I want and what is real are two separate things. Like I said, I would like to be able to fly like Superman without wings, but that just isn't reality. Like just because you something isn't real doesn't mean that it wouldn't be nice to be true. But if it's not real, it's just not frigging real. So, I would probably feel, I guess, happier if I thought I was going to live after I die. That's not the case. I don't want the blue pill kind of thing. Just live with a comfortable lie. I don't want it. I full credit that was Wachowski sisters. They do a lot of this thing. Like, do you want the hard truth or do you want a comfortable lie? And the opium is the comfortable lie. But there's nothing comfortable about dying. It's death. It's the end of you. There's nothing comfortable about. I mean, slightly maybe, but
it does depend on your circumstances. Like my grandmother,
sure.
Nobody wanted her to go, but she was suffering a rather lot, so it was an overall improvement in her circumstances.
Yeah. No. I absolutely. I grant that. However, you'd think that eternal life would include, perfect health as well. So, I'm not sure how that would work. But no, it's just like, when you're talking about an opium, it has to be better circumstances. And I think you get my point. Like, it just, you would have to say that the opium would be something I want, and I don't want to die.
Yeah, I kind of get you. Like, people have posed to me over the years, oh, you only think that now. You're not really, if you actually did live hundreds of years and watch everyone you love die around you. Well, first of all, that's assuming that I get to live forever and nobody else does. If I can do it, probably other people can do it too. But that's not even the issue. There's also quality of life. Like, we kind of assume that we'll be healthy and not suffering in great pain.
Right.
I wouldn't mind being 1,000-year-old 40-something, although a 20-something would be even better. But being 1,000-year-old 100-year-old is less appealing,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like you can't just assume that I'm rejecting it. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll think about it a bit more.
Our greed, our cowardice, our murders are not going to be judged. Ladies and gentlemen, Freud could give you an explanation in both directions. But what Freud cannot do, as Manfred Lutz, the brilliant German psychiatrist, has pointed out, Freud cannot help you at all on the question of whether God exists or not.
Why are we pivoting to Freud? What's Freud got to do with anything?
My dude, he's
not
John, you've got 5 minutes. Why are you pointing out something that doesn't help your case in any way?
Freud wasn't even that great a psychiatrist. I mean, he had some really weird ideas on the ego and things like. I mean, he had some good ideas, but he had some terrible ones as well. So.
Oh yeah. Honestly, his biggest contribution was just trying to systematize psychiatry into a formal study. The actual ideas he contributed are hit or miss.
Yep.
And that really is the basic question behind our consideration tonight. Is God great? Of course, presumes that there is a God to be great. And I have argued tonight that there is evidence in the universe of the existence of God, but in particular, that God has revealed himself to us not only in creation, but also in that inbuilt moral sense that we all share. And it seems to be enormously important that we see that there's real evidence that points upwards and doesn't point downwards. But
the fuck does that even mean?
I don't know. It points upwards and not downwards.
I was willing to give him upwards because of that, old general idea heaven is that way ish.
Right.
Even though it's not. Yeah, but down what do you mean downwards? What the fuck? Oh my goodness. And he's had this entire debate. He says that the greatness of God hinges on, first and foremost, whether God actually exists, which I think Hitch would definitely agree with. And then he just says there is evidence, and then doesn't provide, he said the whole debate hasn't presented evidence.
But Freud can't help you. Yeah. But Freud can't help you.
For fuck's sake. The only thing he's mentioned thus far that's remotely tangible in a conceptual way is the concept of morality, which immediately falls apart because we all have very different morals.
Yes, moral diversity. Yeah, absolutely.
By reading to you a Times columnist article written by an atheist, Matthew Paris.
Well, the atheist obviously doesn't believe in a God, so what?
He says this: as an atheist, I truly believe that Africa needs God. Missionaries, not aid money, are the solution to Africa's biggest problem.
Really?
What? Okay, so Africa needs charity. Yeah, that's essentially what we're arguing.
Yeah, but
So
not
God is
not aid
great.
money. It needs Jesus, not, food.
But hang on a second. How does that prove God? Even if, right, and this is a big grant, even if I grant you that missionaries are the best thing for Africa, that they do the most amazing work over there, and let's just grant that what he's saying is true, that Africa truly needs missionary work in order. I don't think that's the case, but let's grant it anyway for the sake of argument. How does that get you to a God is great rather than the missionaries are great? How does that breach that? Like, that's what your missionaries are doing. Like, that just says the missionaries are great. Even if I grant that they're doing the best thing for Africa, which I don't think they are, and quite frankly, it's weird that you bring it up, since missionaries caused the AIDS epidemic to blow out of proportion over there. And they actually started a whole bunch of people believing in witches and killing people over there because they went round going, "Do not suffer a witch to live."
The crushing passivity of the people's mindset. Now a confirmed atheist, I've become convinced of the enormous contribution that Christian evangelism makes in Africa, sharply distinct from the work of secular NGOs, government projects, and international aid efforts. These alone will not do. Education and training alone will not do. In Africa, Christianity changes people's hearts. It brings a spiritual transformation. The rebirth is real, the change is good.
Who was this atheist? And what did they write? Citation needed, please, because I'm not saying an atheist didn't say it. They may have thought that missionaries are the best for Africa, but it does smack.
It is possible someone wrote that. The fact they're an atheist and the fact that they may have written that doesn't make it true. But I do kind of have a little bit of. So I had an ex who. She was one of those people who was a serial dater. Like, she defined her identity based on who she happened to be with. She didn't really know herself. So, several partners after me, she calls me up and she's like, I can't keep doing this. I don't know who I am. And I said, yeah, you're right. You need to take some time and get to know yourself before you get into another serious relationship. And she said, but I get so lonely. I can't stand the loneliness. So I recommended to her to join a fucking church. Because it's all we have in our area, where there's, fellowships and congregations. I'm like, honestly, I don't think the Christianity's true, but you could definitely use the fellowship. It will help you find you.
Join a book club. I don't know.
Yeah, bowling league.
Yeah.
Ironically,
Bowling
I met her
league,
on a
sure.
bowling league,
Oh, okay. Well, but yeah, this whole idea, and plus it's sort of this appeal to this what one random person says, I don't understand how that's, like, for it only gets to missionaries are good. It doesn't get, missionaries are great. It doesn't get to God is great. Number two, it's just one random person's opinion.
Yeah, it's like if I pulled out that room rumble that you posted earlier. Today for me, but yesterday for you. And I pointed it at Sam and said, see, this one Christian is a gigantic doucheball. Therefore, all Christians believe in being a gigantic doucheball. Like, no, one dude saying a thing doesn't mean that thing is true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and plus, you haven't even named the person to see whether they are, in fact, somebody we should listen to, or whether they're just some random person.
Those who want Africa to walk tall amid 21st century global competition must not kid themselves that providing the material means or even the know-how that accompanies what we call development will make the change. A whole belief system must first be supplanted, and I'm afraid it has to be supplanted by another. Removing Christian evangelism from the African equation, says an atheist, may leave the continent at the mercy of a malign fusion of Nike, the witch doctor, the mobile phone, and the machete. At the heart of the Christian message is something so utterly great and good that...
I'm squinting and looking sideways, and that's still not making sense to me.
Yeah, I don't... the mobile phone and the machete. I get what you're saying.
It's a false dichotomy, I guess, of like either missionaries or endless civil war with child soldiers, which is literally happening anyway.
Yeah. I forgot, like, because atheism has to lead to madness. So I mean, there's no case that he made for that. He just stated that was the case. But who needs supporting evidence when you can just assert things?
Yeah, that's not even a fallacy. That's a propaganda thing. Like, you make a claim so big and bold, this is the horrible consequence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No mere human could do it. And that is the fact that Christ died for the sins of the world. Christopher Hitchens finds it repellent, as he says in his book, the idea of one man dying for another, as one man cannot take another man's sins. He is absolutely right, ladies and gentlemen. When Jesus told a man that his sins were forgiven, the people around at the time were as outraged as Christopher Hitchens. Who can forgive sins, they said, but God alone. But that is exactly the issue. If Jesus is merely a man like all others, then of course it's outrageous. But he isn't. He is man, but he never was merely man. And that's why his death is utterly unique, and why millions throughout history and in our world today find peace and forgiveness in his name. At lunchtime, Mr. Hitchens told us he didn't like the imagery of the shepherd and the sheep that occurs in the New Testament, because shepherds are usually out to fleece their sheep and eat them. But
Okay, so now he's just sort of quoting Hitchens.
He has nothing of his own to say. It's fine.
That's the point, ladies and gentlemen. Because when Jesus Christ said he was the good shepherd, he was making a contrast between himself and earthly shepherds. He said he was there to protect them when the wolves come. That he was there not to kill the sheep, but to be a most unusual shepherd, that he would give his life.
He was a shepherd, but a special shepherd, not a usual shepherd, not a human shepherd.
I'm suddenly reminded of Terry Pratchett, who said you can tell when a religious book is written by shepherds because they feel like people have to be led. If only God had appeared to a pastoralist in the next valley over who herded goats, we'd have a very different world.
Because goats, no, goats need to be led and sheep need to be driven. Was his thing. Because you've got to drive sheep. You can't lead them.
That's why we need sheepdogs.
Why we need more goats?
Apologists in this case. Yeah, and goats are so... it's weird to me how similar goats are to sheep physiologically. I mean, there's the wool and whatnot. But as far as the underlying, anatomy, musculature, skeleton, and so forth. But goats can climb literally anything, and sheep are afraid of everything. I don't understand. Goats, gravity doesn't even apply to goats. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's those ibex goats which stand on those like sheer cliff faces, and you're just like, what are you doing? Like, how are you there? It's impossible. It's really great. I love it.
And as for fleecing them and eventually destroying them, what did he say? He said this: "I shall lose not one of them." I think this is one of the most magnificent images because it says the exact opposite of what Mr. Hitchens wants it to say. Ladies and
No, the shepherd analogy works. You've got, like, literally, this is what I don't understand about Christians. They will be proud of being literal sheep. You know what I mean? Like, they will go, we are the sheep. And the sort of modern adage of being a sheep means that you just get driven around by whoever threatens you and you don't think about what you're doing. You're just moving with the flock kind of thing. And it's such an absolute great sort of description for how some of these, they don't think about what they're talking about. And you know that from when you get into conversations with them, and they haven't given one thought to the problems and they haven't even opened the Bible. They're just going with the flock. That's all they're doing. But they're proud to be sheep, and follow sort of the rest of the flock kind of thing, which is weird. It's weird to me. I don't get it. Maybe I'm a goat. I think you're a goat. I think you're the goat, Ember. There you go.
Oh, if only. But yeah, I could see you being a reincarnated goat because of your clear desire to defy gravity, just like a goat.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What do you mean I'm upside down?
No, that whole flying like Superman thing from earlier.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking you were coming another jab at me for being Australian and upside down. So
No, actually, despite your accent, I kind of forget that you're on the opposite side of the planet half the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it doesn't register in my lizard brain that we
Yeah,
could
yeah.
possibly communicate this fast if you were that far away, you know?
Oh, I love it. I'm just amazed by like how the internet works. It's one of those things where it's just incredible. It's a thing of like it's a thing of beauty. The way that it routes is just it's so beautiful. Like whenever it encounters an obstacle or tries to, information can't be passed, the routing system immediately considers it's a mistake and looks for a secondary and tertiary path to wherever it's going. It's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's my thing. Love it. Love routing.
Gentlemen, God is not only great, Christ has shown us that he is immeasurably great.
Has he, though?
Has he? You couldn't have told us about any of those things which made him immeasurably great. You only told us about things that humans have done. So, and I mean, somebody human that you said was God. So, that's okay. That's okay.
What if Jesus was a goat?
What if Jesus was a goat? Well, I think they think Jesus is the goat. I mean, they really do.
I know they like to say he's the Lamb of God. He's the
goat
sheep
of
incarnate. God. You know, all the What if he's actually a goat in sheep's clothing? I suppose to mix my metaphors.
Okay, so if he was the goat of God, he would chew on random things and eat random things. His miracles would probably involve slopes, so he'd probably walk up a mountain rather than walk on water, would be my guess. Like up a vertical cliff face, he'd probably just wander up of it if he was the goat of God. Have you ever played Goat Simulator? That's a stupid game.
I have not. I've heard a couple of my friends mention it, but yeah,
that is a game. It exists, and it's kind of pointless and kind of funny, and it's just a physics engine reduced down to a goat wandering around. It's just it's really really silly. It's just one of those silly little projects somebody had, but you know.
I'm unable. I can't afford myself. I find I haven't it in me to make as an assumption what I need to prove, and I can't get comfort this way. You'll have to bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. I can't applaud as easily as you do conservation offered in that form. I still have unanswered questions, challenges to myself that I feel I must deal with. To my question, could a moral action be performed by a believer and not performed by me? Dr. Lennox, you will have noticed. I said.
Oh, I love this. He's bringing up his original questions. Oh,
yeah,
he
the way around.
He didn't answer it all the way through, and it's not Hitchens' responsibility to remind him of the challenge he provided to his opponent. He should have addressed it, and he didn't. And now he's bringing it up again. Oh, Hitch. Oh, yeah, love it, mate. Love it.
Big brain.
Absolutely love it. Yep.
There's a moral action that a believer could perform that I couldn't, and that was to offer myself as a sacrifice for the redemption of humanity. I think you will see that there's a catch in that answer, in that the average person, unbeliever, can't simultaneously be claiming to be the son of, or perhaps you'd rather say, God himself. And that's before you have to decide whether vicarious redemption, scapegoating, is a moral action in the first instance. So if I may say so modestly, I think that my question still stands, and that anyone who heard it would have to say it hadn't yet been answered, and that's by a great theologian at that. I'm a Navy brat myself. I'm from Portsmouth, and there's a famous story about a young officer undergoing a rigorous examination to pass for captain. And he's told to picture himself on a leeward shore with a very strong wind driving him towards the rocks. He's asked, what are you going to do? He says, well, cram on all sail and steer to starboard, hard down on the tiller and on the wheel. But the wind keeps coming. You're still being driven on. What are you going to do now? He said, cram on more sail but keep the wheel very hard down away from the leeward side. But you're still being driven onto those rocks, young man. What are you going to do now? He said, cram on more sail and keep the rudder and the tiller hard down on the starboard side. And he's interrupted. He said, where are you getting all this extra sail from? And he says, the same place you're getting all your extra wind from. I want to warn you, as I close, ladies and gentlemen, against the dangers of tautology. If everything that cannot be explained, everything that is mysterious to us, humanists say, or transcendent, must therefore be laid to the charge or the credit of a supernatural being, then nothing remains to be explained. everything is in potential explicable. There's no problem to begin with. There's no point in this argument. Of course, there's no mystery. There's no need for cogitation. There's no need for reflection. It must be part of a divine plan. I hope you can see the fallacy that protrudes from that conclusion too. Where does the transcendent come from? I'm happy to say I don't really know what the wells.
Yeah, if you've got God as an answer, why look any further?
Yeah. I frequently put it in very similar terms. I say when you pretend to have all the answers, you stop looking for real answers.
Yeah. And being, 100% sure that it's God, it doesn't make you right. You just think you can't be wrong. It's something that I often say. It's just, if you're going to say, hey, that's God and God alone and that's it, it would be horrendous for our scientific inquiry and things like that.
Well, as an intellectual exercise, let's turn it around and say there actually is a God, and he sends an incarnate version of himself down to earth to tell humans how to have eternal life. And he comes across the Christians who say, no, thank you, we already have the answer.
What do you mean?
Like, what if a literal God literally comes down and says, this is how you can have eternal life, and he tries to tell people, and he runs around, and the Christians deny him because they already have their preferred answer. They won't listen to the actual correct answer from a real God.
All the different denominations exist as they are in the world, that Jesus actually comes and says, hey, this is how you get eternal life, and presumably he's, denounced as an imposter and stuff by every single religion because they've already got
they're like, no thanks, we've already been visited by the real Jesus.
I don't think a Jesus would be believed today. He'd have to pull some spectacular miracles out of his butt to actually be believed these days.
I've asked a few people, like, considering how sophisticated modern magicians are, what would count as an actual miracle? And so far, I don't have a good answer on that one. Nobody's given me one.
No,
I can't think of one myself.
Well, it depends what you define as a miracle, because some people will just say, hey, it's an unlikely occurrence, sort of thing.
Meh.
So, but some people, that person that was shot in the head and they survived, it's like, well, it's a miracle. Well, that sort of devalues what a miracle is.
In a colloquial way, I could see that being, it's a miracle, like, the odds are extremely remote. I get that. But I don't think it'd be supernatural.
But some people sort of do say that it is actually a miracle that God made it happen. But then again, some people say, hey, God finding my car keys is a miracle, so... I
was just thinking of that.
Yeah.
Frickin' Hovind.
You've got to, don't you? And it's if that's all that a miracle is just something unlikely happening, then, what does that say about miracles? Like they happen all the time and just by seemingly coincidence. It sort of devalues what it would be, and certainly shouldn't convince anybody, because coincidences happen. These things actually do happen, and there's nothing, like, it's only a miracle if it's good, right? Like, I once saw this thing about how a woman was shot in the back of the head while driving along a freeway. I think it was in Florida. And none of her windows were broken, and there appeared to be nobody that would have shot her. And it was actually somebody had fired a gun offshore, and in a freak chance, it hit the water, ricocheted, went through her back rear window that was slightly ajar, like so one of those triangular windows in the old cars. It went through that little window in the tiniest of gaps and hit her right underneath the skull. And if it had hit anything along the way, it wouldn't have killed her because it was coming from miles away, right? And it just, all of these things lined up into this coincidence that took her life. It was insane. And these coincidences happen. They just happen.
Yeah, that's like a negative miracle. Like, God really wanted her dead.
Oh, yeah. But we sort of, these things, we can kind of look at them and go, okay, well, it seems like freak chance, but it's more deterministic. All of these things lined up in precisely the exact way that caused that outcome. And these things do happen. Freaky, but they happen.
springs of the transcendent are in me or are in us. But it does no good to say, oh, don't you know, they come to you by divine permission. Nothing is added by that explanation or that assumption. I didn't rise to the challenge.
What did Matt Delahunty used to say? He used to say you can't explain, what was it? You can't explain a mystery with a greater mystery. So the idea that if you say God, it doesn't explain anything. It's like saying magic or cosmic waves without actually explaining what those are. Like, it doesn't explain anything. It's just it's kind of a Austin Whitsitt answer, you know.
Yeah, it's having an answer for the sake of having an answer.
Right.
But it doesn't actually answer.
Or a Deepak Chopra answer, you know, like it's seismic quantity of photonerisms, you know, like it doesn't actually say anything.
It's your observational perspective as a real being is influencing the energy flow of the universe, actualizing your desires in the firmament or fucking something.
Yeah, you just make it up as you go along.
About atheist regimes in the 20th century, and I really should take a minute. I hope I've got a minute for this. I'll be very brief. If you take out the word fascism from any history of the 1920s and 30s, any decent history, and replace it with the words the Catholic right wing, you don't need to change anything. Fascism is just another name for the extreme right-wing forces of the Roman Catholic Church. That's true whether it's Portugal, Croatia, Poland, Hungary, Italy, and all of these regimes and movements had a specific concordat with the Vatican.
Germany too, by the by, just saying. Just saying, they had a concord with the Vatican.
Yeah, very Catholic friendly, extremely right wing. It's not a good look.
Yeah, so I mean, we know Hitler didn't like the Catholic Church, hated it, but he still worked with it because it gave him legitimate. There was a whole bunch of benefits he got. There was a whole bunch of benefits the Catholic Church got. He's not wrong about this. The Christian right wing and fascism are essentially the same, because fascism, a property of fascism that it has it is religious based, right? Like, it has this religiosity to it, as opposed to the very left wing, which is communism, which doesn't have that religiosity to it. I mean, they end up at similar places because of the nature of how they come out.
Well, I don't really like comparing the two, because communism is it has been applied in various ways, but it's fundamentally an economic system rather than a governmental system. So you can end up with a fascistic communist regime.
Well, no. If you're talking about sort of political schemes, they both end up at totalitarian, but they're both socioeconomic standards, but they're both socioeconomic in nature.
Kinda. You start with the basics of the economy and then you derive your government from there. It's kind of putting the cart before the horse. You should have your government put in place the system for the economy to function. It's sort of like saying that capitalism is inherently democratic. Capitalism doesn't care about how you enact your laws or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
It's not actually strictly relevant.
Yeah, but capitalism is sort of, I get what you're saying. It's just, I think that I think that communism does sort of the way that it's been implemented has always lent to totalitarianism. I'm struggling to think of a case where it hasn't. Maybe Cuba in a certain way there
are a couple of minor exceptions. The Mondragon region of Spain, there's a province in India where they practice what we would call democratic socialism, but it's closer to Marxist communism than the Soviets ever achieved. But I do agree that it's really, really hard to get all the way to ideal communism because you have humans in the mix, and humans, the people who are most prone to corruption are also the ones who are going to try to grasp for power most eagerly, you know?
Well, that's true. Humans do suck a lot of the time. I get that. Like, a lot of these problems with systems aren't necessarily problems with the systems, but problems with humans. I gotcha. Like, I understand that. It's just, any extreme, whether left or right, seems to end up with these problems more pronounced than others, just because of the level of extremism. But this is a conversation. Like, we're going way off topic.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah.
Not say that fascism is a secular or atheist movement, not if you don't want to do great violence to history. The churches of Germany celebrated the birthday of Adolf Hitler every year until 1945 by order. And his first significant treaty of the Nazi regime was with the Vatican at Concordat that gave the church a monopoly over the education of German children in response for a pact that abolished Catholic parties that might challenge the rule of Hitler. That's not secularism, excuse me. It's not atheism either. Quite wrong to say that it is. It's a form of paganism, as a matter of fact, but would have involved, as well as a compromise with Christianity.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. I wouldn't call Hitler a Christian either. He was sort of had his own weird-ass paganish religion based upon Germanic myth and occultism kind of thing. He was a weirdo.
But we don't even know. We don't even know how deeply into the occult Hitler was. But the fact that so much of that occultic mysticism, the entire division. I mean, hell, it's a key element in some of our frickin' comic books. The whole Hydra element, trying to find the keys to the Nordic gods and all that crap.
Yeah.
Like, it was a really, really big thing for him. And it kind of fed into his weird science thing. Like, I don't know if it was a flaw in his mentality or what the deal was, but he seemed to be unable to distinguish the difference between sci-fi and actual cutting-edge science. And because of that, he pushed the German scientists to come up with shit that was, frankly, way the hell ahead of its time. Like, the difference between the V1 and the V2 rocket is just insane. And it was the technology from the V2 rocket that led to our ability to get to the moon much sooner than we had any technological right to. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Revival of some Nordic myths, but those weren't secular or atheistic either. The cult of Wotan and Odin is not atheism. In the case of the Soviet Union, where the population had been told for centuries that the Tsar was like the Pope, divinely inspired and divinely empowered, and where serfdom was justified by the Russian Orthodox Church, which was a state church. If you was Joseph Stalin, seminarian graduate, seizing power, you don't know how to exploit a reservoir of credulity and stupidity and passivity and servility like that, you shouldn't be in business. And what did he do? He replicated the same thing. There was an inquisition, a heresy hunt, a promotion of himself as the divine one from whom all blessings flowed, and all the rest of it. And to this day, the Russian Orthodox Church, which never ceased to support Stalin, has under Putin actually begun to produce icons. I can show them to you if you doubt me. You can look them up on the Weekly Standard website, any of you tonight. Icons of the Russian Orthodox Church showing Joseph Stalin with a halo around his head. This is not atheism.
I want to check that. I'm going to fact check you, Christopher Hitchens.
Let's look at some icons.
So it was from the Russian Orthodox.
Yeah, because we're taught in the U.S. anyway. We were taught that the first act of Stalin when he snatched power from Lenin's cooling corpse was to abolish the churches, because communism needs to be a godless religion. It can't tolerate God. And while it's true that Stalin's regime took a shit ton of power from the church, it never actually abolished it. Like I don't have clear data because of the propaganda that we were fed here in the US about it. But as I understand it, there's a bit of a row going on between the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Russian Orthodox Church, because they're both the Eastern Orthodox Church. And during the Soviet regime, Moscow was not a good place to be a church. So they moved the headquarters to Kyiv. And then after the Soviet Union fell, some of them went back to Moscow and some of them stayed in Kyiv. And now they're not sure who actually has the authority. So it's a thing, but...
Yeah. They're actually... Well, it says the Russian Orthodox Church is outraged by the Stalin icons, but I'm not sure. There's certainly icons depicting Stalin as a saint, like with halos and things, but I'm not sure how much the Russian Orthodox Church is on board with that.
Yeah, it very well could be that the party commissioned the artists who were previously making those icons for the church to make some, because it's not the church that makes them, right? It's always an artist commissioned by the church. They may be a church member, but it's always individuals who do it. It's not like the church has an icon printing machine, you know?
Right, right. But yeah, there does seem to be some truth to this. But I'm not sure how much there is a support from the Russian Orthodox Church. They appear not to support it. So yeah, not sure about that one. I don't think that's actually correct.
Yeah, although it's
Sorry,
hard to
Hitch.
say, because what they say now that they're not under the thumb of the party, could be different from what they said then.
Well, that's
when they
true.
were.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Yeah. History be trippy, yo.
Well, apparently the current Putin regime is putting up sort of icons.
It's actually
To
what I
Stalin.
thought he was going with is Putin icons.
Many Russian Christian leaders were signatories to a letter to the Bishop of Moscow protesting Stalin's inclusion in the cathedral mural due to his crimes, but for some time the decision was defended by both the Russian Orthodox Church and the military. So there are people like sort of Catholics, Russian Orthodox Catholics, sort of protesting about it, but they're still putting them up.
Yeah,
Ugh,
so
that is
it's
horrifying.
Little division among things going on
Yeah.
there.
And if you wanted to have any doubts about sort of what's going on in Russia, that's the head of the Russian Orthodoxy Church with Putin there. So they are fully still supporting this horrible, horrible man. Oh, he said Putin?
I
Did he?
thought he did, but
Oh,
I mean,
okay. Well, that's my bad then. I'm sorry.
well, he did say Stalin several times after, so I thought I misheard him say Putin earlier.
Yeah.
Was it secularism? If William Wilberforce was indeed animated by Christianity,
Well, can we just remember that Putin is now a wanted criminal by The Hague for war crimes? So the Russian Orthodoxy Church is supporting a war criminal. So make no doubt about it. That will not look kindly on them once this is over. However it goes, whether it ends tomorrow or in 50 years' time, they're going to come out supporting a war criminal. So,
And isn't it weird how most of the figures we look on over the past few hundred years as major war criminals always seem to have a cozy relationship with their neighborhood religion?
Yeah, pretty much.
Like the only real exception that comes to mind is Pol Pot, and I'm not 100% sure about that.
Well, and Mao.
Maybe. I'd have to
Maybe?
reread the chairman's book again.
Okay.
It could be one of those things where, like with North Korea, like the state religion is the state.
Yeah.
You know,
that's true.
they have that necrocracy where the original head overlord dude, his ghost is still in charge or some shit.
Yeah, that's true.
I have to make this my closing point. In his campaign against slavery, he should have been, because it was about time that there was a Christian who said that this trade had gone on long enough. And any Christian should have felt responsible for saying so, because for the entire period of its existence, slavery and the slave trade had been justified directly by reference to the Christian religion and by direct references to the warrant for slavery that's contained in Holy Writ and in Scripture. That's why we like the captain who wrote Amazing Grace, because he'd been the captain of a slave ship. And he was just as much of a Christian when he was doing the first thing as he was when he was doing the second. The chances, though, that a member of the American Anti-Slavery Society, Thomas Paine, Benjamin Franklin, the others, was not a Christian would be extremely high. The chances that until very, very, very late in the 19th century, a defender of slavery would be a Christian were statistically enormous. It therefore proves absolutely nothing about Christianity that some of its members finally turned against one of their foulest practices and impositions. And if I was a Christian, I would avoid this argument very carefully as tending to show that there is no basis in faith.
Yeah, take note. pre-suppers and other young Earth creationists who'd love to get into this debate for some reason. I don't know why. It's crazy. Does the Bible support religion? Yeah. Support slavery? Yes, absolutely.
Does it support religion?
Obviously,
though?
it supports religion. Yes, obviously. But does it also support slavery? Absolutely. It makes the rules. It makes the outlines. It shows how to do it, when to do it, to whom to do it. That there is no. It condones slavery. There's no getting around. Like there's just no getting around it. Even if it's not really real slavery, like the antebellum South, like it's still slavery.
Oh
Just
yeah.
happy good slavery is still slavery.
Yep. If you're property, if you're not free, you're a slave. Even if you use
Yeah.
the word servant for it.
And they sort of go, oh, well, there's people in China that are enslaved today, and, you're a hypocrite because you use them. And it's like, well, did you just conceded the debate then?
Yeah. You said slavery is bad, though, right? You agree with me on that point? Okay.
For morality. That our morality is innate to us. It's very nice when sometimes religion catches up to morality for a change. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Hitch ends on it's nice when religion catches up to secular morality is what he's talking about. Because, they're always lagging behind. It's always, these people are bad, these people are horrible, we've got to treat them like this, we've got to rip them out of our society root and stem, and it's only years later that they catch up and suddenly start to treat some people with decency. And the reason why is because people leave their religion. Decent people leave their religion, and suddenly they're not getting the money anymore. And so, they have to do things to catch up.
You raise an interesting point from the other point of view. Perhaps it takes religion so damn long to catch up to the rest of society because all the decent people leave. So only the people who think horrible things are okay are still in the religion. There's nobody
possibly
there to champion the change.
I guess I'm thinking more of the Catholic Church, which sort of had these outrageous stances on everything. And, I call Pope Francis, right? I call him the public relations Pope because he really was put there to sort of go, okay, we're going to treat gay people better, and we're going to treat all of these people, and we're going to sort of, and that's them catching up to the rest of society because they're aware that even very pious Catholics are going, well, this is not good,
Yeah, like the church says this, but I'm still going to act like a decent person.
Yeah. And sort of thinking, well, why am I giving my money to the church which covers up certain crimes that we're all familiar with? Why would I support that thing? So, like, I feel for them. It's a crisis of faith, etc., etc. But at the same time, you don't need these places to be a decent person. And in fact, they may be preventing you from being a decent person by carrying out these horrible acts. So, put your money to some place that is actually doing good, not covering up the crimes of the men in cloth that they support. Give it to some charities that are actually doing good things, taking care of children instead of damaging them. That would be a better idea. But because they're aware of this, they're doing damage control. And the cynical part of me says it's because they're not getting as much money as they used to. They're not on that high moral footing anymore.
Yeah, of course, they would say they're not saving as many souls as they used to, but it amounts to the same thing from either perspective. It's just one way is a bit more realistic about it. As to the actual topic of the debate, obviously Hitchens had to delve into religion because if he just stood up there and said, I see no evidence for God over and over again, we wouldn't have anything to talk about really. But I don't think Lennox ever really managed to refute not only the original question, whether God exists and from that point is great or not, but couldn't even successfully fight Hitchens on whether religions are a force for good in the world. Like,
so I think
it's weird that he offered Hitchens that charity earlier on about, here's a softer position, when he couldn't even hold his fortified position, for lack of a better term.
So the fallacy, because we were doing fallacy of silence today, so I've got them knocking around my head. It's got a mott and bailey, right? So the mott is the outer wall and the bailey is the inside secure position. So he's retreating, like saying, well, God is great in the mott, it's the more vulnerable place, and then retreating to, well, religions do all these good, and solidifying that easier to defend place. But you're right. Hitchens even breached that by pointing out all the harm that religion does. So I don't see how he proved that God was great. But you're right. But as I would have preferred for Hitchens to point out that even if all the religions in the world did all the good in the world, it still doesn't A, mean a God exists, and B, that God is great. I mean, the God could be wanting, us to burn the Canaanites to the ground, and we happen to be doing good in spite of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or God may want us to all enslave one another willy-nilly, and we're doing good in spite of that. It doesn't demonstrate that God is great. So, I would have preferred if he point that out, but, I mean, I guess he doesn't have to. He's so secure in his debate victory that he doesn't even have to. So that's what I choose to believe. No, I would have liked if he pointed that out.
Yeah, I would have taken this debate in a slightly different direction myself. But on the other hand, Hitch does so many of these. He's got to get tired of making the same case over and over. So he's like, you know what? This time we're gonna play, the Queen's Gambit stratagem or something.
Mm-hmm.
See what happens.
Yeah.
See if anything interesting falls out.
Yeah. So Ember, is God great?
I mean, I can't really say. I need to see a God first, and nobody's been able to demonstrate one to me. So I got to go not applicable on that one.
Yeah, and I think that something that's non-existent can't be anything. It just isn't. So it's not great. It's not bad. It just is. It isn't anything until it shows itself. I'm not going to deem it anything.
Or if you want to take it another way, God is a figment of your imagination, then that depends on the person doing the imagining. Although I think John Rapp has the best answer.
He's great. Yeah. Okay. At hide and seek. Yeah. Well, not so much. He's seeking, maybe. I don't know. Anyway. That wraps up the part 2 of Hitchens versus Lennox, where I've had a great time. This has been really interesting, a lot of fun. Hitchens on fine form as usual. I wish I could speak in the eloquent yet succinct and marvelous way this man throws out evidences and just his amazing. I think it's not just the way he talks; it's his repertoire of facts and draws upon knowledge of so many books and philosophies, and referring to the Parthenaean and then all the philosophers around. It just his knowledge is astounding. So we can only sort of revel in the good old Hitch slap. Oh, yeah, no problem, Beta Ray. It was my pleasure. It was great to have you all here. I love to see you all. I love to see you, Ember. I love doing this. I hope we're back on your channel in a week's time to do something else, I guess. I'm glad we finished this one, though. It seems like some of his knockout blows were in those final sort of discussions kind of thing, where I think he really excelled.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost a Olympic style thing, right? Like you get in a few points early, slap, and then you just kind of fence for a while and hold them there, and then when it's time to end the debate, you do the Mortal Kombat thing and you finish him.
Yeah, finish him and then rip his spine out. But I want to see that debate. Yeah, so what have you got coming up, Ember? Share with us. What is your fine self doing over the next?
I'm always up to crazy stuff. Tomorrow I'll be on Aaron's channel for Joseph Smith, and then right after that on my channel, this week's Atheist Lives, I'm having Banned Books in the U.S. That's run by the moderator from the line that people know as I Got Cookies. It's a brand new channel.
Okay.
like a month old, and it's about all the book bans going on in the U.S., what's behind them and why, and
It's
how we can
crazy.
fight back. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
crazy.
that's why I think that channel is really, really important, which is why I invited her to come on and talk about it, because
Yeah, sure,
we
absolutely.
have to
Yeah.
stop this nonsense.
Yeah, this is not cool. Like even books I disagree with, like Anne Rand, for instance, the Atlas Shrugged and things like that. I would never ban those books. I completely vehemently disagree with them. I wouldn't ban them. Like, come on, that's books.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything is useful, at least to study
Yeah,
what went into that and why, and so we can analyze it and break it down. And
absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, I think the Bible's a horrendous book. I think the Quran's a horrendous book. I would never ban them. They're books. You don't just ban books because you don't agree with their concept. You're right. You use them as examples of how people think, and that can never be a bad thing. Even to say, "Hey, don't think like this." That can be useful in and of itself. No, I agree. That's really
yeah,
good, Ember. I'd love to tune into that one. Absolutely.
yeah. So I'm excited about that one. And then
Hmm.
next week it's a little chaotic because I'm making some changes to my schedule. I'm probably going to have some changes in work going on, taking on another job, and that's going to change my release schedule all over the bloody place. But I'm trying a new thing. So on Monday, I'm releasing a digest edition, which is I took a live stream that was 4 hours long, edited it down to 49 minutes, and I'm going to release it as a regular standalone video. And there's a bunch of different factors that go into it. But the TLDR is a lot of people look at a 4 hour video and go, yeah, no. But a 49-minute video, they may watch. So we'll see how that
Right,
goes.
right. Yeah, I've got to start delving into that myself. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then I've got a regular video set for the 13th, whenever the hell that is. I'm trying to reinvigorate my channel, so I came across another 10 questions atheists must answer, and I'm like, oh, I must I, and that reminded me my very first video was a 10 questions for atheists video. So I'm like, yeah, well, let's try that. And oh my goodness, it was the most fun response video I've ever done, and so that's out on the 13th.
As long as you're enjoying it, that's the important thing. Honestly,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that's
it was
really where it's
fantastic.
at. Yeah.
Monday, we're over on Doc Dinos for a creation science dunking thing. I think we have a fella named Howard this week we're going to be engaging with. That should be interesting. I'm definitely going to bring more hard cider for
Howard.
that.
So is that the video you're watching by a guy named Howard Stirrup? Because that would be hilarious.
Possibly. I'm not quite
Oh,
entirely sure.
Howard Stirrup I've debated him before. You have this surreal feeling after talking with, like, he's a man that's never met a conspiracy that he hasn't liked, sort of thing.
Oh, fun. So
yeah, no, he's a yeah.
Yeah, so a bunch of interesting stuff coming up. What do you got going on this week?
I'm gonna try and do a video. Somebody posted a comment that I really wanted to post a video over why. So yesterday, 99% of the world's population experienced direct sunlight, and somebody said, "Hey, do a video on it." And I'm like, I think they were a flat earther, but I really want to do it. I really do want to do it.
Is that
so
true,
I think
though?
I might do that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
And there's good reasons why, and I can want to explain why. So if you want to know why yesterday 99% of the world's population got direct sunlight, I will be covering that. Why didn't it let me post that? Error?
Yeah, YouTube's been having errors with chat functionality going down. Yeah, I tried to post a thing too.
I want to plug Ember. What are you doing? I hate you. I'm trying to plug Ember and it's not letting. Oh, look, YouTube, you're not winning. You're not winning. There's no way. I'm gonna go in through here and I'm gonna log in. Not letting. Different account. Oh, did that mispost it? Oh,
Yeah,
dear.
I'm trying a
Okay.
different window too, and maybe it'll work. I'm trying to respond to Jake.
No,
Jake
don't
Jake
get me to
mentioned
it.
that I'm a background while he's editing, and I'm like, I'm a background, neat. Because I always
You're a
have
background.
yeah, I always have other people on in the background. When I'm editing, I'll put on like a long Guts at Gibbon episode,
Yeah.
or Godless Engineer's latest rant, or one of your room rumbles, or I like to have
Yeah,
something
yeah.
to stimulate my brain besides just the cut and paste going on when I'm editing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, but apart from that, I'm probably going to do a subscriber only stream where I'm playing for the conversationalist and above, so the medium level members of the channel and above. I'm playing Medieval Dynasty, where I'm trying to get myself a bogan wife. You heard it first. Yes, the bogan wife. Do you know what a bogan is?
It's some kind of mischievous mythical critter, kind of like a goblin, maybe.
No, it's an Australian term. It's a bogan.
Okay.
Think redneck, but more white trash kind of thing.
Oh no.
So yeah, um, so that's going on. I'll probably do that very soon. I've got on my other channel, which I don't know why I started because I can't even manage one channel, much less two. But never mind. It'll all fall into line somewhere along the place. I'm playing Ark Survival with dinosaurs. I might have some debates coming up. I think I might be doing a 2v2 with Ozian soon on Modern Day Debate, if we can find another flat earther to come on board. So
which
that would
side
be
is
great.
Ozian going to be on?
He's not going to be flat earther. Come on now. Don't
Well,
hassle Ozian.
he's the reason I mentioned it is because he's had some odd takes recently, and I'm not really sure.
Not that odd. No, no, Ozian's fine. He's just he's a libertarian. That's all. He's not insane or anything. Come on now. Yeah. So thank you everybody, and I don't know what's going on. Apart from that, I don't have much. But I'll bounce around. I'll try to do. Look, I really enjoyed that last room rumble with the pre-subs. And don't look. I want to clear the record here, just officially. I don't go into them looking to make things horrible or make things awful. I've had plenty of room rumbles where I've gone in there. It's been a really good conversation. Like CJ Cox, I went to his room and it was a perfectly polite and excellent conversation. The back and forth ideas. So it's been leveraged against me that I try and cause trouble. And I think that people seeing the name of the Reed's Royal Room Rumbles think, oh, he just goes in there to... No, that's not what I'm doing. I simply go in there to have conversations. The fact that sort of creationists lose their mind and sort of attack and cause a garbage fire has got nothing to do with me. Like, it's just what happens. So yeah, but yeah, thank you so much everybody. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed this this second part that we had to do of the sorry, I'm trying to zoom my camera properly, of the Hitchens debate, because we all love a Hitchens debate. So do like, subscribe, share, and we will catch you in the next one. Don't forget to be kind to yourself and kind to each other. But until then, all the best.
Night, everybody.